Team Leader, Inclusive Growth and Sustainability, UNDP Ethiopia, Mr. Gisachu Sisai. I leave you in the very able hands of our moderator and our esteemed panelists. Good morning. Over to you, Jean.
Perhaps I can suggest that the panel all sit. I have a few framing comments, but first of all, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, that impactful introduction. Pooja and I have this bet about how many times you can get the word impactful into sentences, including really inappropriate ones. So we're going for that, by the way. I think she's winning. So this session really is about the role of development and development assistance in agriculture, but particularly agriculture, if you like, from the financial resilience perspective in light of the 2 days of conference that we're in now, based in and around the Indian initiative over the last, certainly the last 8 years, but well even back into the 80s. And also before that, we had 2 days of our own work on financial resilience in agriculture, a new initiative financed by the Gates Foundation. I have a few opening comments, and then I'm going to go to my panel. So first of all, a big and a huge thank you to the Indian government for these 2 days. Thank you to Mr. Ritesh Chauhan, the Joint Secretary and CEO of the PMFBY, for all of the work of the team, the wider team, in getting this event up and running, and the success that we've already seen in the videos. Thanks to our brothers and sisters in the UNDP country office in India, really, for working so closely with them and making this a reality. I think it's really significant, of course. I was incredibly impressed by the work under the PMFBY, but also in general how India is looking at, if you like, a new way of looking at issues of risk and finance and development. I'm also thinking about the Finance Commission report of, I think it was 2022, which marks a significant shift beyond the agricultural sector into looking at, if you like, crisis from an ex-ante, so before the fact solution. So I'm incredibly impressed. First of all, I did also agree with Pooja that I would be allowed, well, I agree, I asked her permission, I should say, to start with Shakespeare. She has left the room now. So this is Shakespeare. I'm sure you know Shakespeare, of course. And this is how it goes. My colleagues need to be aware on the panel. So, and I'm sure you're aware of this. It goes like this. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, which is a famous statement. However, do colleagues know what comes next? Because this is a kind of a eulogy of Mark Antony. And he's basically warning the assassinators that he's setting them up for a fall. So what comes next? I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. That's a warning to the panel. The good is oft interred with their bones. So we're looking to get really excellent comments from them today. Now, I just have a few sort of framing comments in and around development and financial resilience. So our own work in this space in UNDP is actually really new. The Insurance and Risk Finance Facility is essentially only officially 3 years old. It did not exist, even though UNDP's work in this space has existed longer. Now we're working in 34 countries and supporting other countries as well through this work. We have a rather simple objective to protect, sustain, and incentivize development. That last part is really key. We really do feel on our side, and I imagine maybe our colleagues will, I'll ask them a question later, the role of financial resilience is not just about protecting the here and now, it's about what it represents in terms of incentivizing development, incentivizing investment, providing a space for choice, for entrepreneurism, for innovation, which would not otherwise exist if you did not have your risks protected. This is really, really a key point, and that's what I believe the development community is all about in this space. It's worthwhile noting that development has been traditionally blind to this subject. It is actually not that an old conversation within the development sphere when we talk about what I sometimes call financial risk management. If you look at the SDGs, they're almost blind to the issue of financial risk management. They're almost blind to the issue of risk in general. So I don't even think within the SDGs as reference, for example, to risk transfer and its importance of sustaining development. How in the world of rising risk can you have development if you don't sustain it, protect those investments? And the elements of the, if you like, the ecosystem of the insurance and development community, like the Insurance Development Forum, which I have the pleasure of co-creating and also co-chair, the Insure-Resilience Global Partnership, the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, these are all less than 10 years old. So this is all relatively new in the development community. So that's just a little bit of framing from my side. Now, some statistics, which I also started with when we had the Financial Resilience in Agriculture a few days as well. Some worrying statistics for our work in financial protection of agriculture. So there are a collection from different places. So 4 out of every 5 countries in Africa will not have their own sustainable water supply by 2030. That's 6 years away. 4 out of every 5. The impact, the consequences from that, I think, could be very significant indeed. We know that drought affects 40% of the world already. Desertification has, from a historical basis, essentially increased 35 times the pace of desertification around the world, affecting many countries. As I mentioned a few days ago, the impact on crop and livestock, $3.8 trillion lost in 30 years. $3.8 trillion lost. And yet, we also have rapidly rising risk, the frequency and severity of crisis. We see it each and every day. The humanitarian burden is very significant. You know, the UN used to appeal for about $6 billion a year when I used to track this about 15 years ago. $6 or $7 billion a year sounds like a lot of money. The UN appeal, humanitarian appeal 2 years ago was $50 billion. $50 billion just to keep people alive. Now, that is important. I'm not saying that is important. We need that, of course. But there's something wrong about development assistance from which that money is drawn if we are spending a quarter of it, as could be, because that would be a quarter of ODA, development assistance, just protecting people and keeping them alive. That is rather perverse, if you don't mind me saying. And then we have these interconnection of other issues, such as environmental degradation, outbreaks, and perhaps an increase of conflict, which we've seen in the last few years, price shocks, etc. You know, the Human Development Report, which is the sort of one of the core, if you like, flagship reports of the UN, each and every year tracking human development, which for only in the last 3 years saw a decline that was largely COVID-based. 6 out of 7 people assessed in, there was a global sort of assessment of people, 6 out of 7 people around the world are feeling increasingly uncertain. Increasingly uncertain. Now, my perspective is that insurance risk finance is an antidote to uncertainty, the personal and also the lives in which we live and our assets, etc. So this is our sort of where we are, I would say, and yet financial protection is almost entirely absent from the world. Each and every year, $300 billion lost from disaster, $380 billion last year. About 50% of that is covered by insurance. The bulk of that is in developed countries, advanced markets. In many developing countries and communities, that's less than 10%, even less than 5%. So that essentially has to be, if that's going to be recovered, reconstructed, that's from new money. And now you may be aware there's not a lot of new money around the world. Many countries of the world are heavily indebted already. So that is really key. As I mentioned also a few days ago, only 3% of farmers in sub-Saharan Africa have any insurance. Actually, only 3% across all different types of insurance in Africa. And we know from this region, South Asia, Southeast Asia, an increased prevalence of cyclones and floods, both the frequency and the severity. You see it here in India, but you see it in some of your neighbors as well, such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So just some statistics on development assistance. So development assistance last year was $220 billion. That sounds like a lot of money. That is actually an increase, about 7.5% over the last 5 years or so. Let me just give you a few other statistics. I'm sure you know the Premiership, the Premier League, if you follow football. You have heard of this, yes? It's the British League of Football. Just want to let you know that the 400 young men, boys in some cases, they earn $1.839 billion, a year. That's their current salary levels. Now, if they actually basically said, you know what, we don't want to get paid for this year. If they wanted to become a country, and they wanted to give that money to ODA, they would be the 20th contributor, 20th largest contributor of ODA. That's just 400 young men in one single profession in one part of the world. So yes, development assistance is huge, $220 billion, but here we have a single sport. essentially $2 billion of money, if you like, going to such a small amount of people. I'm trying to show the impact and the different levels of things here, colleagues. Geopolitics and its impact on development assistance is a huge thing. I want to give you some statistics from back in 2000. So in about 2000 or so, Iraq was, I think, something like 95th of the recipient of ODA, development assistance, and Afghanistan was something like 60th. They were not huge recipients of development assistance. By the end of the decade, the end of the 2000s, they had accounted for $1 out of every $10 of development assistance. In some cases, like $12 billion a year, just going to 2 countries. That means the other 9 out of $10 had to be spread across every other country of the world, Ethiopia and all other countries. Geopolitics and the issue of conflict. Interesting, we have it again also within the current statistics of development assistance. So Ukraine is going to account for about $45 billion of ODA in 2023. That's essentially the same for the whole of Africa, just one country. So this is my narrative, colleagues. Maybe as a final point before I just summarize my narrative. In the multilateral sector, I did a very anecdotal review last night of how much money we, colleagues like ADB and ILO, are spending in this space. I'm not quite sure. I did it at the back of a matchbox. Probably we are investing, in terms of technical assistance, geotechnical assistance, about $500 or $600 million currently in the space of financial resilience, not including loans. That is a pitiful amount of money, considering all of the risks that I mentioned. You know, in the last 18 months, we've had requests from 43 countries for assistance beyond our existing resources. That's just UNDP. So here's the narrative. Massive and growing risks, increasing complicated world. The trends are bad and not improving. There is an absence of financial protection, and development assistance is not fully ready for this. However, there are some positives just within my own orbit. Of course, we have seen here today and over these days, India itself and the focus on South-South cooperation, how other countries can learn. I think that's going to be very interesting for the future. I've personally learned a lot in the last few days. We do have industry commitment, both within this country, but within the world as well. One of the largest programs that we run is something called the Tripartite Agreement with the German government. And we have 20 of the world's largest insurers with us who have committed $5 billion of risk capital as part of the initiative in 20 countries. But it's still a drop in the ocean, my friends. Gates Foundation, $8.6 billion they will spend in 2024. That would be the 6th largest country in the world in terms of DAC, if it was a DAC country. That's just one foundation. That's incredible and incredible. So that is my introduction, and now I will go over to my panelists and ask them questions. I'm going to come over here. So. I'm going to start with a very quick fire, if you don't mind, friends. I also wrote to them this morning, like 7 a.m., and said I'm abandoning the text so that we could just do something a little bit different, but only mildly different. I'd like to start with Olga first, and I just want a quick sentence or two, and I will be quite severe on this, about yourself and the role of Syngenta Foundation when it comes to financial protection, what it does and what they do. We'll come to wider conversations later, if we could start with you.
Namaste. Namaste, everyone. So thanks for hosting us here, first of all, government in this wonderful location of Goa. I'm Olga Spekert, and I'm the head of the Global Agricultural Solutions at Syngenta Foundation. I've been in the insurance industry for now 27 years, being an underwriter before, a reinsurer, and leading these efforts as a catalyst, which is a beautiful position to be for the last 12 years. And quite a journey, Jan. So I'm very happy to share that is really all about the people, really, about trying to add kind of suncor into the system and really linking those dots together. And so, yeah, bringing all these pieces together and linking those dots is super important. And that's your role now. I think you are in this kind of sweet spot of being that convener, how to identify your right partners, having the support of a great government, and really be that convener, linking all those dots, sharing that knowledge everywhere, replicating that knowledge transfer, and do this across the globe. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you for that. Didn't quite answer my question, but we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Arab, I want to just get you to say, what do you do in ADB, and what ADB does in financial resilience in a sentence or two. We'll have time for more detail.
So I'm Arup Chatterjee. I'm the Principal Financial Sector Specialist with the Asian Development Bank. ADB is also the climate bank for the Asia and the Pacific. We have a climate finance target of 100 billion for the period 2019 to 2030. So we work in terms of building institutional resilience, in terms of building physical resilience, and also financial resilience of the developing member countries, and also look at developing sustainable and insurance societies.
Thank you very much, Arab. I will now go to my friend Pranav from ILO. Interesting enough, I mean, from ILO, I was just charting about the very recent history of the bulk of the UN family anyway, when it comes to insurance and risk financing. Actually, ILO was definitely a leader in this space before because of the work that you were doing out of Geneva and beyond. But maybe if you could just give us a few words as Arab did.
Thanks. You've taken my punchline away, but...
I'm so sorry.
Okay. But I'm Pranav Prasad, and as Jan mentioned, I work for the International Labour Organization in a program that is, at the risk of repeating the word again, called the Impact Insurance Facility. And we are all about trying to create many of the things that Olga and Arup talked about and check them out in the real market space through technical assistance, etc. Started out as the innovation facility. So we have incubated innovations, we have incubated ideas, tried to plant 100 seeds, 90 may die, but learn from all those lessons and record them so that the others don't make the same mistakes and are able to take forward the success factors going ahead. We'll talk about more of our work there. But yes, we are proud to have got risk management and insurance into the UN system in 2008 when the Gates Foundation helped us to start this entire business. And I've been associated since 2009 with the facility and hope to be driving the entire agenda forward in cooperation with all the colleagues here.
Thank you, Pranav, for that. And then we go last but not least on our first simple question. Mr. Gizachu from Ethiopia. If you could just, again, as the other panelists have done, just introduce yourself, your role in UNDP, and how UNDP, both you and UNDP in Ethiopia, is looking at issues of financial resilience. Just a little bit of a framing comment.
Thank you, John. I think as UNDP, what we're doing, John himself briefed. My name is Gizacho. I'm team leader for inclusive economic transformation at the UNDP Ethiopia country office. What we're doing in Ethiopia is supporting the member state Ethiopia and also its community, its people, to be resilient. I think we have established the climate green resilient facility for the government to help the people to become resilient. We have a largest portfolio on climate change adaptation and mitigation in Ethiopia that has helped to withstand, the various risks. When it comes to finance, we have established, which I will talk later, especially for MSMEs involved in agribusiness or any other sector, what we call the Innovative Finance Lab, which has its own component of de-risking mechanism so that the financial institutions would become interested to lend finance for MSMEs. So we are also building the capacity of the government, building institutions, and supporting them to be more resilient to absorb, the various risks that the country is facing. That's in brief.
Thank you so much for that introduction. We see friends from the audience. We have a wide and diverse expertise here on the panel. Now I'd like to come back to essentially the two main questions that I'm going to ask. The second question, by the way, I'm just want you to get thinking about is, I want you to be a little bit critical of the development system and saying, what have we got wrong? If the statistics, what I've told you, the narrative, which I do believe holds water, what have we got wrong and what have we got right? Maybe the first question is, maybe a bit high level in a sense, but I'd like your framing of it in whatever way you feel fit, which is, given where we are in the world in rising risk, pressures on finances, demands on countries in so many places, what is the role of development assistance when it comes to financial protection? What exactly should we do and what perhaps we should not do? So firstly, I'd go to Olga for that one.
That's a question, right? So I think what we do observe is the lack of collaboration, co-creation. I think we need to stop operating in silos and work really together. I do see still a lot of institutions coming up, new startups, newcomers, but I think it is time to really get together and go for an action one. What's been really good, I would say, the engagement lately seeing from the macro to meso level interventions. I think that is really changing. When we started, Pranav can talk about this, but it was very much basis on the micro level, and that would never take off. So linking the three levels is important. Communication got to be there. Now we're talking about financial products. So again, communication between the insurers and banks need to improve. We need to speak the same language. We need to have the same focus. The farmer got to be at the center of the discussion and then try to really join forces, really have the same language. So that it's in my view, yeah.
Translation service, I do think that's one thing that we in the development community should be doing. And often we talk about our role in UNDP and I think the UN family about translating when it comes to government, between government and industry, who are talking about the same issue using entirely different language. And that's something. But can I ask you, what do you feel is the role of development assistance broadly when it comes to this space? What is the role?
I think what I have heard yesterday and seeing on your program with the Indian government, I think is an excellent example to be really replicated. So how can we really transfer that approach to not only neighborhood countries, but all over? So I think a community of practice at the level of the government, really, it's really to have this kind of, say, circle of people, regulators, ministries, just sitting together and sharing their experiences and the learnings, the good learnings to be replicated. And this is an excellent example, yeah.
Okay, so that I'm getting a lot of, so focus really on the south-south side of things.
Definitely.
Which, I mean, from my perspective, having started in development about 24 years ago, I certainly, when I started, which was much more sort of working not at HQ and in countries, it was not part of the lexicon. We didn't really talk about it. It was from north to south. It was about aid and so forth. Let me just go to then Arup as well, my senior colleague from ADB. So again, looking at the sort of broad question about, from your perspective and experience, what is the role of development assistance in terms of financial protection? Perhaps the financial protection of agriculture, but you may answer it as you see fit.
So the broad purpose of development finance is to help countries build infrastructure so that they can be on the growth path in terms of economic development and also betterment of the lives of their citizens. Where development assistance could have contributed more in terms of ensuring that these development gains are preserved and countries do not have to borrow again and again for building and maintenance of the same infrastructure. And that's where the issue of financial resilience comes in. If there is a linkage of development with insurance, then the gains can be protected through risk sharing and risk transfer mechanisms. So I would like to flag that one first. In terms of development work, we have also need to work more closely with the clients and understand their needs so that more bespoke and tailored solutions can be developed. And that is something where there is a lot of improvement which is possible. Risk management already takes place. Like the farmers are at the forefront of the risk. They are what you call taking risk upon themselves. And it would be good to understand how they perceive risks. The perception of risk changes as you move from one segment of the population to the other segment of the population. So farmers account for some types of risk, and they really don't bother in terms of whether they are insured or not. Say, perennial floods which happen in the floodplains, they bring rich alluvial soil. The farmers factor that in their production process. They know in certain years the yield will be high, certain years the yield would be low. So that is fine. Where better understanding is needed is in terms of understanding of the covariate risk or the catastrophic risk. And that is where the what we call the information asymmetry in terms of data poses a big challenge. And if that data can be made available to the farming community, and they are able to understand that what is a flood risk in terms of bringing in rich alluvial soil, and something which a flood risk which is because of glacial melting and things like that, they would be able to differentiate and understand where insurance makes more sense and where insurance doesn't make sense. It's not only with relation to the farmer, but also in terms of the local governments and the provincial governments and the federal governments also. When you talk to the policymakers, you talk to the political leaders or the political elite, there is a lot of need in terms of making them wiser in terms of providing the information, and also in terms of explaining some of the solutions in terms of how they can manage their contingent liabilities, whether it is a local government at the municipal level or the state government or the federal government. One of the biggest challenges of climate change today or of disasters is weather-related risk and how to manage the contingent liabilities. So and in terms of managing contingent liabilities, I mentioned yesterday, there has to be a risk-layered approach. The budgetary mechanism is there. Access to other funds from the federal government would be another way to beef up. And then there would be the multilaterals who come up with policy-based loans and other loans to provide that budgetary support. And then insurance and reinsurance-like mechanisms. So we need to explain to them the range of options and the range of possibilities so that they can optimize the use of different financial instruments to build their financial resilience. We need to crowd in the private sector. This responsibility is not only of the government, so the private sector also has a role to play. And here, when I talk of the private sector in the financial space, it is banks, capital markets, and also insurance. I don't want to go into insurance, but the role of capital markets is something I did not hear during the discussions. If we are talking of bringing in access to finance solutions, we need to bring in the capital markets. Some of the solutions in terms of access to finance is more in terms of working capital finance, which has been discussed. But if the SMEs, MSMEs, and others need to invest in resilience, they have to bring in new technologies and new or modern crop husbandry and animal husbandry practices in the case of the farming community. So medium-term loans can be made available through the capital markets where there is a role for the non-life insurer, the life insurers there. So far, we only limit ourselves to a role for the non-life insurers. So life insurers can invest, and the other institutional investors can invest in those bonds and other types of products which can be invested for long-term investment and also supporting some of the medium-term efforts of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Arab. So what I'm taking away, which is an awful summary of what you said, of course, when it comes to development assistance, I'm picking up a few things. One is a little bit like translation service, or development community playing a role of connecting farmers through different ways to the kinds of things that they need, whether that's the value chain players, the capital markets, and so on, in many ways at the top, perhaps, but in various different aspects. So listening to farmers and communities and countries as clients, not just the sort of development aid paradigm. Also, what I got from you was a sense that providing information and technical assistance is not about taking decisions for people. It's about providing them with the information which they may not, from within the country as it is, have. That's where UN and others can actually play a role, for example. But actually the decisions about what they do about their lives and the choices they take is actually more their decisions, and that's really, that has changed as well. So thank you very much for that. I would like now to go to Pradhan for the same question, framing it as you see fit. You know, what is the role of development assistance from your experience?
So, Chair, let me try and respond to this question by taking the wonderful help of the wonderful audience here and ask them a few questions, if you don't mind. So, Jan has set a broad agenda on what should we do and what have we been doing. So, we all drive vehicles, we all have cars, we all have vehicles. So, do cars go faster because of the brakes or in spite of them? Are we able to drive faster because of the brakes in the car, or do they stop us from going fast? Because of the brakes. If we didn't have brakes, we would be driving at 10 kilometers per hour. Because we have brakes and we have a surety that we can drive faster. Broadly, that's the role for insurance, and that is one of the functions that we in the development sector can do. Facilitate the process by accelerating and acting as the brake by showing a mirror of what is going right and what's going wrong and prevent it. The other question also, Arup mentioned a lot of things. I'll try and simplify it by a small mathematical equation. In India, it has suddenly become very popular. A plus B whole squared. We know what the definition is. A plus B whole squared is equivalent to A squared plus B squared plus 2AB. ये 2AB कहाँ से आ गया? And that is the 2AB that the development sector and the financial sector can actually help and provide the entire industry by carrying forward the way. Allow me to elucidate by taking a few examples of what it is. I mentioned incubate ideas. One of the first things that I think we talk about parametric insurance. I think the sector, the development world, and especially in agriculture, can contribute by contributing at each stage of the insurance value chain. There would have been no parametric insurance if colleagues in the CRMG of the World Bank had not come up with this index insurance idea, and people in the implementation industry like us had not taken it on and built it forward. Testing new approaches and incubating them. So bundling with products. Credit has been there for a long time, but other innovations like bundling with input providers, bundling with contract farming organizations, bundling with fertilizers. Ethiopia is a great example of bundling with fertilizers and the government programs in that. Helping in creating infrastructure. In Senegal, the entire weather station base is by the development sector, is with development sector support as has moved forward. closer home here in India, the funding sector, etc., besides all the wonderful work that organizations do, now we have clear-cut examples of Insurance Solutions Fund that you mentioned, Jan, in the beginning, supporting government of Nagaland develop a full-fledged disaster management strategy and disaster risk strategies going forward. We heard of Rwanda's example yesterday with Mangesh. That's also supported by the development sector in terms of getting the support and kickstarting and acting as the glue that Olga brought about. And Africa is full. I mean, FISP in Zambia is another clear-cut case where the entire agri-support program, the way Arup decides, has been supported by the sector. So yes, in addition to the South-South, it is the North-South linkages that are important and continue to grow in importance. One thing that we would like to do more, and as you mentioned, which we haven't done, is while keeping the focus on sustainability, what concrete steps can we take as to what happens after the funding stops, what happens after it moves forward, and so how can that be taken forward? So this entire issue of business case on one side, that how does it become a business as usual, and what kind of client value can be created, just keeping these two mirrors in hand, I think the development sector can contribute to this place. I'll just stop here.
Thank you, Pranav. I mean, apart from learning that apparently the development system is all about mathematical equations that I have no idea what's going on there. So colleagues will come and tell me later. But apart from that, I've got to take away some other things from what you said, so thank you so much. So the issue about innovation and the development community working with governments, with insurance community, etc., to develop solutions which otherwise would not take place. So maybe that, coming back to the title of this session, de-risking. And I do actually think that's a role of the development community more broadly, to broadly de-risk. And I'm not talking about sort of financial de-risking of investments here, about almost like doing that thing which others would not do, you know, leaping into the face of uncertainty because we believe, working with governments, etc., that there is a solution out there to a thing. Now, one of the tension points, I'd say, here in a world of $220 billion of ODA, of which almost none of which is spent on financial resilience, as I mentioned, you know, let's think about the loss and damage fund, $700 million loss and damage fund. That sounds incredible, doesn't it? Well, let's look to your neighbor, Pakistan, flooding of last year, $40 billion of damage. $40 billion of damage. One country, one disaster, 1 year. They had a similar flooding 10 years ago. India yourself, you see many disasters, of course. Many other countries without the resources of India have significant disasters each and every year. Loss and damage, 700 million? That's not fantastic, let's be honest with you. So the issue here about innovation and great, but what about scale? So what's the tension there when actually the development community, broadly speaking, incredibly under pressure, like on core resources, UNDP is one of them, and I'm sure ILO is the same. Pressure on core resources, how do we manage to not be innovative or be innovative, but do innovations at scale? Now, this is, I think, a great segue into Ethiopia, which has been, whether it wanted to or not, almost like the guinea pig of Africa, I would say, in terms of initiatives, attempts to look at agricultural financial resilience in lots of ways over the last 20 years. Perhaps with mixed success, if I could say, because you'll tell me. So, thinking about the Ethiopian experience, your expertise and experience, what do you think is the role of development assistance in and beyond Ethiopia?
Thank you, Ian. I think if we look the role of development assistance, we are not there to replace government. We are not there to replace private sector. We have our own defined roles and responsibilities in a country, in a member country where we are serving. If you look the risk management flow, it starts with the first avoid the risk. Okay, what role we can play there? Identify the risk, analyze the risk like the IPCC is doing. That's our role. Helping the member state to know the risk, to identify the risk, to analyze the risk. And then on the risk mitigation stage, we have still a role there, helping the communities and the member states to mitigate the risk. in various forms, maybe adaptation programs, mitigation programs, by implementing so many programs. Then if it is inevitable, you have to accept the risk and you have to share the risk. So that's where, the role of the insurance and the private sector would become very vital, and also the role of the government. So our role is gradually reducing as we go along, from the identification of the risk all the way transferring the risk. When it comes to the transferring the risk, of course, the private sector need to be there, the government need to be there, and the community need also bear part of the risk and absorb the shock due to these various risks, whether it's caused by climate or any other disaster. So along this pathway, I think we have a defined role. In Ethiopia, I think on the concept of innovation, what we did as we do development in Ethiopia, we realized we have been supporting the MSMEs. Ethiopia has more than 2 million MSMEs, and we realized there is a huge gap in terms of access to finance, about $6 billion financial gap for MSMEs. And we realized the conventional banking system is not addressing this financial need, and the microfinance institutions are also not addressing this, and Ethiopia's MSMEs access to finance is far below the sub-Saharan average. So we came up with an innovation, what we call the Innovative Finance Lab. This is a mechanism that's set under the Capital Market Authority, and the objective is to mobilize $100 million fund to be mobilized and availed in the coming 3 years, which is a very good work on progress. And there is a lot of traction from local financial institutions to invest. It's not because we preached this for the financial institutions, but we have done some de-risking mechanisms for the financial institutions to build trust on the enterprises, on the small enterprises. Previously, they were saying, no, this is a high-risk area. I think obviously we know the financial institutions, they always see two things, risk and return. So if there is a high risk, they are not interested. If there is a low return, they are not interested. So because of this, we are helping by supporting the MSMEs to be ready for investment, making them ready for investment so that financial institutions will start to lend. And we have set up what we call the Technical Assistance Facility. The facility is helping MSMEs to be ready for accessing finance. And we have set up what we call the Enterprise Financing Facility, which is where the $100 million will be managed. There is a fund management there. We are not there as a development partner. We know our role is making the enterprises ready to access to finance. So that way, I think the program has got a lot of traction from the government, from the financial institutions, from the enterprises themselves. So this kind of innovative approach would help, to mobilize resource locally, because as you rightly mentioned, the ODA is reducing. This year, Ethiopia was appealing every year because of the drought, appealing through the UN humanitarian appeal of $3.8 billion. What we got was only $600 million. It was last week in London. The appeal was there. UN was coordinating, and no one is giving you money. The ODA is reducing. So we have to have, member states need to have their own mechanism of mobilizing resource internally and have innovative measures to address, such risks for the community and the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe just touch upon that issue about finances, I guess, again, which is, of course, this is partly a north-south conversation about the cost and the burden of climate change in particular. So there is I think she's a Harvard economist, Duflo, I can't remember her first name. She wrote recently, or she was interviewed recently, and she's talking about a $500 billion moral debt, if you like, from developed to developing countries. That's actually the real cost. Time's up. Actually, I just want to ask, because we did have some extra time. Where be the organizing parties? The official timekeepers. Otherwise, we'll just keep going up here for the next 4 hours. How much time do we have? Sorry? Time's up. I thought do we go to Q&A? After all the sessions. Okay, well, let me just sum up, reflect on what Gizit just said, and then I'll hand it back. Sorry, we did have another question. So colleagues on the floor, we are deeply upset here on the panelists because we wanted to keep going. But Gizit, I want to pick up a few things you mentioned to do justice to it. So you started off, I think, with a very important thing, which is the UN is not there to replace government. Although, interestingly enough, in some contexts, fragile and conflict-affected states, we're often asked to replace some aspects of governance, I guess, where we have peacekeeping and other things. But well noted in a country like Ethiopia, that's definitely not our role. And I got another sense of that translation service in different ways. And also through, for example, on your work on SMEs, how insurance financial resilience is part of a bigger picture of investment in communities, and how the UN and other parties can connect the dots, both between processes, but also between the different parties. So, colleagues and friends on the floor, and here on the podium, I'd like to say thank you very much, and we will be, I guess, we'll be available later for questions. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause to our moderator and panelists. I don't think we could have asked for a better session to kickstart day 2. And on that note, we are ready for our next one. I do apologize. We're trying to keep time due to paucity of time. We're going to keep the panel discussions to about 40 minutes. Moving forward, at the end of all the discussions and deliberations, we will have an open question and answer session. Calling upon now for technology infusion in agriculture insurance and agri-financing for limiting risks in agriculture. We call upon our moderator, Director, MNCFC India, Dr. C.S. Murthy, to please come up and take on a very esteemed panel and dive deep into the subject of technology infusion in agriculture insurance and agri-financing for limiting risks in agriculture. Huge round of applause for Dr. C.S. Murthy, and also calling upon our panelist, lead researcher, NASA Harvest France, Mr. Shabrinath S. Nair, Director, SAC ISRO India, Dr. Nilesh Desai, CTO and co-founder, Plantix Germany, Mr. Rob Stray, APAC Lead Insurance and Banking, Planet Labs Singapore, Shri Satish Raju. Yes, we can keep the applause going as we have our panelists coming up, and also CEO and founder, Actual BV, the Netherlands, Shri Vikram Sarbjana. Just the perfect panel for this topic. Over to our moderator.
First of all, good morning to all of you, and thanks for this opportunity. I am really pleased to handle this session on technologies to support crop insurance. What are the technology interventions? And this is one area where I have been working for the last 3 decades to bring technologies into agriculture sector, to improve the decision making in agriculture, as well as to improve agriculture statistics in India. So having said that, to set the context for this important, very important and very significant session. The context is very, very simple. Climate change is a reality, and agriculture production risks are ever increasing. So these risks are very, very random in nature. They take place any part of the season, in the beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. So it is a reality, and the reality is that agriculture is becoming a victim, immediate victim of all these climate change or climate aberrations, whatever are happening. And capturing these risks, these crop risks, because cropping system, entire cropping system is a biological system, it's not a physical system. Capturing these risks, parameterizing these risks, and developing a solution to integrate with crop loss assessment mechanism, whether it is risk transfer or disaster relief, this continues to be a challenge, because so many risks, they are very localized, many risks are occurs in a larger area and different parts of the season, different critical stages of the crop growth. So the ability to capture these risks, the ability to parameterize these risks, the ability to quantify these risks, they determine the efficiency or effectiveness of any crop insurance scheme all over the world. So particularly in India, the demand for data-driven solutions or evidence-based solutions, the demand is fast increasing. And of course, there is, if you see that from 2016, there has been a very conspicuous shift in the way the technology solutions are getting ingested into the system of crop insurance in India, starting from national NCIP portal, smart sampling, and recording the whole crop cutting process through smartphones. And of course, the three big interventions, STEC, yield estimation system, winds, and CropEq. So these are not a small measures. These are going to be a very long-term and sustaining technology interventions in the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana or any other crop insurance scheme that is going to come up in India and elsewhere. So having said this, I am very happy to moderate this session, which is having very wide expertise, starting from hardcore electronics engineer who is well known for designing sensors for remote sensing systems, and my senior colleague at Space Application Center, ISRO. He is a top ISRO scientist. He is known for designing sensor systems, new satellites, and followed by the data scientists and the data producing agencies, and more the time Mr. Rob, the photo analytics, capturing the crops through smartphones. It's a very good wide expertise in this panel. It gives me once again immense pleasure to moderate the panel with such a diversified expertise. So my first, the scope of this particular session is that what are the challenges, what are the opportunities for bringing more and more technology-driven solutions into the crop insurance system, either India and elsewhere, and explore the opportunities for collaborations, transformative collaborations, because this requires diversified expertise. What are the possibilities for having a transformative collaborations within India or other outside India and within Indian companies? So we from MNCFC, we have the rich source of data with us. So we have our presence, we have strong connectivity with the various expert agencies. So it offers a lot of opportunities to bring some meaningful collaborations to develop the technology solutions. Having said this, so my first point of discussion goes to Sri Nilesh Desai ji, because Space Application Center is supporting us, our STEC program, immensely, and various other crop insurance programs since last many years. So I request Sri Desai ji to give his comments, to give his feedback on STEC at the first, and then give his suggestions or his observations. How can we improve our STEC using the various kinds of satellite data sets, geophysical data sets that are currently available at the Space Application Center? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. So let me thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity. And 26th April, today is a very apt day to discuss this technology infusion. Why I'm saying this? Because some of you may remember India's first radar satellite, which has gone a long way in feeding inputs to this technology infusion for agriculture forecasting. That is RISAT, Radar Imaging Satellite 1, was launched on this date, 26 April 2012. So we have crossed almost 12 years and celebrating this anniversary of this particular radar satellite. Of course, after that, we have launched many of the satellites. So now coming to the point which Dr. Murthy was asking about the yield estimation using technology infusion. So that is, the program has been started in collaboration with Ministry of Agriculture and Department of Space and ISRO is feeding into that all the aspects. As far as the technology infusions are concerned, we have right now, Yes Tech program, we have various mentor institutes. So Space Application Center is one of them. Then we have National Remote Sensing Center at Hyderabad. Like that, many of the ISRO centers are working as the mentor institute for technology rollout. Mitra, we have named it like MITR, Mitra. So they will provide support to assigned states. And as far as our center is concerned, where I am heading that Space Application Center at Ahmedabad, ISRO is providing support and mentorship for wheat and rice crops. For these particular two crops, of course, we started with a very ambitious idea of having 66 crops monitoring and forecasting. Of course, that is not easy. It is very easier said than done. So we zeroed down to 25, from that to 10 crops to 8. And finally, now Ministry of Agriculture wants that we do it in a complete manner for these two particular wheat and rice crops for 8 states to start with. Because we are going in a big way with this technology infusion. And as far as SEC is concerned, we are supporting 3 states, Haryana, Andhra Pradesh, and Assam. So like that, many of our centers are supporting, they are partnering with these respective states. So right now 8 states are being supported all across India by 3 major ISRO centers. And then we want to expand it to include more crops as well as more states into that. So that is the idea with which we are going ahead as far as technology infusion is concerned. And coming to the STEC, the major threats or the major challenges which we face is, as all of you will know, that when you want to infuse satellite data, there is a conflicting requirement of high spatial resolution with a very good temporal resolution. So these are both are the conflicting requirements. Either you get good spatial resolution up to 5 meter or even lesser, or you go with a highly temporal resolution, then you don't get the required swath coverage. So acreage and all that will suffer. So balancing both the yield estimation as well as acreage, and along with that, high spatial resolution and high temporal resolution. These are the challenges which we are facing right now. Of course, satellite is going to be the major component in this Yes Tech, and now we are trying to see the infusion of whether drone-based technologies can help us to validate or calibrate whatever data we collect. But finally, satellite is going to be the major source of data which will be utilized to, as I said, to start with 2 crops, wheat and rice, all across the country, followed by we move on to 8 to 10 crops. And then, of course, horticulture also is one of the components which we want to take up. So these are the basic challenges which we are going to face. Of course, we have started in a very modest way, but we want to expand it in a big way. There are many satellites lined up, so we'll come to that aspect when we discuss further about this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then I just pass on my next question to Sabrinath, lead researcher NASA Harvest. Are there any new models of crop risk assessment being developed by your center? Or can we replicate them in India? Or you are doing any reducing the basis risk? Or any new models are you developing? Can you just throw some light on that?
Yes, sure. Firstly, yeah, just as a context, we at NASA Harvest are currently involved. I mean, the main mandate of the organization was to do rapid response to both natural and human-made calamities. but also we are starting initiatives in the space of sustainable agriculture and insurance. And mostly we have been working extensively in conflict regions, both like in recently in Ukraine and also now in Africa and so on. And in terms of crop risk models, the direction which we are going in is actually to design models which in a way kind of uh, decouple the weather and remote sensing first and then combine it. I mean, the reason for that is by being able to look at, you know, similar regions where, you know, there is similar potential for the crops. We are able to expand out the actual units which can be compared. So in a way, we are increasing the area that can be considered within the same unit. And within that, then do more sampling designs and optimal sampling designs, thereby eventually bringing down the number of sample units. We are starting projects in Ethiopia, and we also have a running project in Morocco. We would be like very excited to have partnerships here in India also with MNCFC. So yeah, overall I think that is one direction which we are taking. The other direction is mostly then to look at the stage specific, just like how Murthy sir explained, to actually look at the phenological stages itself. Because a lot of the current index insurance-based units look at seasonal averages, which is very good. But there are triggers within the season which can lead to the crops just not performing or the productivity not. Like for example, if we look at maximum values in a season, post this there could be losses which can lead to a very high basis risk. So then how can you integrate very crop state specific information into the model? So we are working in these couple of directions on the crop risk models.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I now move on to Mr. Vikram. I think he is working with a very, very innovative and solutions through a startup company positioned in Netherlands. So what are the opportunities for developing parametric insurance products? Because a lot of localized risks, so whether they are associated with weather or crop of phenology or whatever it may be. So what are the opportunities to develop new models of crop parametric solutions?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bhuti. Just a little introduction. So yes, I'm Vikram, CEO of Actual BV. We are a Dutch-based insurtech company, and we have been operating now since 2021. We have been incubated at the European Space Agency Incubation Center, where we get a lot of technical support on using ESA's satellite images to analyze crop health and design parametric index insurance products. Coming back to your question on what are the opportunities in developing parametric, I think the first opportunity would be just provide all the data that is available to insurers and to reinsurers. So that's one area in which we work in is, for example, in East Africa, there will be at least 5 different data sets which are available for rainfall. Now, which one does an insurer or a reinsurer take to design the parametric index insurance? So we provide a platform in which you could take these 5 to 10 different rainfall data sets and run your simulations, loss scenarios, look at the data quality, because that needs to become much more transparent. Even though there are 5 different data sets, they are not of equal quality. And if you're going to run an insurance program on such data sets, then latency becomes a really important parameter there. How often is the data updated? How easily is it available? And then I think innovations, I think Jan will speak about, and Indian government also has launched the picture-based. I think that has a huge potential because ultimately from the satellite point of view or from weather stations, you have a limited, let's say, spatial resolution. So picture-based, combining that with satellite-based insights or weather stations insights, how to reduce the basis risk using picture-based would be really a very interesting area to going forward.
So that's good. So now let us move on to smartphones. So this smartphone technology has really revolutionized the data collection system in agriculture, particularly the field data collection system. The penetration of the smartphones, as well as the ability to capture the field photographs indicating the stage of the crop. But the challenge is that how do we extract information, crop information from field photographs and convert that information into a parameter for crop risk assessment? This is an emerging challenge. Of course, there are certain agencies with proven capabilities. Plantex is one successful story. It's a company which is doing this work for last many years. We are very fortunate Mr. Rob is here. We would like to listen from you. Is this smartphone-based crop risk assessment, is it really mature enough to upscale?
I mean, first, thanks, Dr. Moti, and thanks to all the other panelists. I'm very impressed about this conference. So, smartphones, okay? We started Plantix in 2016, and like our idea was that we can like use mobile phones to train machine learning algorithms. So like a farmer can snap an image of an infected plant, and we tell what the disease is, right? And we do this in all the languages. So I was like raising money in Berlin and talking to venture capitalists, and it's like, yeah, but you want to do like apps for small-scale farmers in 2016, right? Like they do not have smartphones. Right? I said, yes, I know they don't have smartphones now, but they will get smartphones, right? And I mean, this is called venture capital. What in venture capital didn't you understand, right? Like if you wait until everyone has a smartphone, it is too late in this case. Throughout the last 8 years, we analyzed more than 100 million images, and more than 30 million farmers used Plantix. So in peak season, we would like analyze like 250,000 to 300,000 images a day. So the scale is working. That would be my point. And I agree with my colleagues that remote sensing is of utmost importance. I mean, I come from remote sensing myself. I studied geography and botanics and soil science. But we are looking at different scales here, right? So if we ask ourselves if we can use remote sensing to identify a drought in a specific area or large-scale floods, for sure we can. I mean, and that is very important and also very powerful. But if we are looking at the issues that farmers are facing, we have viruses that will leave no trace, right? I mean, in India last year we had major infestations with pink bollworm. The crop in itself looks perfectly healthy, right? It is just but the harvest is lost. I mean, we have mice smut. There will be no optical pattern directly seen from space that can show us in this very moment that, you know, we have less photosynthesis. But still, you know, the maize has like a quality that it can only be used for animal fodder, not for human consumption. So like for the farmer, that becomes really an issue. So asking ourselves if we can utilize smartphones to do all of that, I would say a clear yes from my side. And I'm very impressed by the Cropic initiative by the Indian government, right? I mean, as an example, if we look at the insurance claims that are done in the car industry, right, it would be obvious that everyone would believe that if you have a hailstorm, you can go out, you snap an image of your car, you see the damage done by the hail, there is a GPS coordinate, the insurer would know, okay, this is the car that I insured, right, it is my VW or my Tata car, so everything can be processed automatically. If we can do this for cars, why shouldn't we be able to do the same thing for crops as well?
Yeah, that's great. So the first round of discussion, So the next important thing is that right now in agriculture sector, we are mostly using the satellite data of around 10 to 30 meters. Most of the agriculture applications, 90% of the agriculture applications are centered around 10 to 30 meters resolution data sets. But looking at the kind of crop risks that are happening right now, we require better resolution data sets, maybe less than 5 meters or less than 3 meters, something like that. So what are the opportunities for these high resolution data sets, because some of the data sets are available through Planet company? And what are the additional benefits that I am going to get by using the data of around 3 to 5 meters?
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for this opportunity, and very impressed with the deep technical expertise on this panel. because I don't have that technical expertise that rests within my company. I'm a bit of an outsider to this industry, having joined Planet just a couple of years ago. I spent nearly 20 years in Swiss Re and then moved over. But what this has done, it has given me a huge appreciation for the potential of using technology and satellite data for applications in insurance. So let me just take a step back. I don't know whether it was by design or just a coincidence that I just happened to be sitting next to Shabri from NASA Harvest, and he referred to the conflict work or conflict zone work in Ukraine. It was at that time that Planet Labs had collaborated with NASA Harvest to actually map out the impact on the wheat harvest from the Russian invasion. And we came out with a figure of around 20% impact. And as we all know, Ukraine is the grain basket of Europe, of the world. And that kind of timely information allows importers, countries to sort of plan, where do I go for alternative sources of grains and so on. So the potential for using satellite data is immense. And here, my single point agenda is to convince Dr. Murthy and insurance companies and all the stakeholders that we have done a lot of work with open source and ISRO imagery, and I think there is merit in looking at commercial providers. I speak not just for Planet, but for the entire commercial satellite data providers, because we don't have all the solutions. There has to be collaboration between similar data providers and work with the government to provide appropriate data sets for crop mapping, yield estimation, acreage estimation, and so on. So I talked about Ukraine. Let me just take a quick example of Odisha. So Odisha uses Planet data for identifying paddy lands, and that's a very crucial thing because it feeds into the whole public procurement system, and they need to be very sure about who is eligible for these subsidies. Earlier, what used to happen was, lakes were getting sort of uploaded as paddy, cultivable lands, marshy lands, and so on. By using Planet data consistently for the last 3 years, they have gone on record to say that they have saved 1,200 crores per year. And this is with an investment of which runs into, double-digit crores. So the order of magnitude return that you get is multiple times. And the same thing can be applied to insurance as well. So there are a number of colleagues from Africa, for example. So here there is a DRIVE project in the Horn of Africa with which some of you will be familiar, where Planet is basically come in as a calculation agent, and its 3-meter data set is being tested as a shadow model for providing the index for payouts for as and when there is drought. And this is covering actually pastoralists or livelihoods in that region. We also produce soil water content data sets. So it's being used for drought insurance across nearly 30 countries in the world. And maybe the final thing, just coming back very specifically to Dr. Murthy's question about the utility of 3 to 5 meter data sets. So the 3-meter data set comes with daily imaging. And the Planet, through its constellation of 200 satellites, we are downloading 4 million images of the Earth's landmass every single day. Every single day, 4 million images, and with an archive going back 8 years. And particularly when you look at open source satellite data sets like Sentinel, which is commonly used, and in India where we have around 60 to 70% cloud cover during the monsoon season, which is a critical crop growing season, the ability of the Planet data to be able to catch the image of a crop area as and when there is a cloud break is extremely crucial to fill up the gaps. And again, compared to 10-meter, 3-meter provides much more granularity to be able to map crops. And based on this, we've also built up several more products such as crop biomass, and recently we launched...
sorry for interrupting you.
Sorry.
We'll just go for next round of interactions.
Sure.
I think in the first round of interactions, we have provided adequate information to the participants on the emerging technologies. And in the second round, because we are left with only 9 minutes, 53 seconds right now, in the second round, we'll be more brief and very, very specific. I just request Sri Nilesh Desai sir. So what are the future satellite data sets from India so that are going to support Indian crop insurance as well as global crop insurance?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. As you know, we started with the CAPE program for crop acreage, followed by Fasal 1. Now we are starting Fasal 2, then Sufalam. So these are all the semi-physical model-based or model-based programs which will give you the yield as well as the acreage. Now coming to the remote sensing satellites, I already mentioned about the RISAT series of data, which is anyway available now freely to all the users. And we have lined up one major program in collaboration with France, which is called Trishna, which will provide us thermal IR data, which is going to be a very important component. Similarly, we are just waiting for a launch of our very ambitious Indo-US joint collaborative mission of NISR, NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar, which is going to be launched within the next few couple of months. And that will provide L and S-band data. So that will directly feed into especially the various crops like sugarcane, maize, cotton, jute, kharif crops, as well as where you want tall crops with greater than 3-meter height. So it will go a long way in doing that. Similarly, we have a very ambitious, dedicated program for Ministry of Agriculture, Bharat Krishi Sat, where we are planning to launch 2 satellites dedicatedly for Ministry of Agriculture, where data will be exclusively used by Ministry of Agriculture. Of course, it will be available for other users as well. Then we have lined up our GISat-1 program, which is going to be a very important element, both from constant surveillance for a particular area along with the meteorological data. Then we have INSET 3DS, which we have recently launched, which will provide the meteorological component for feeding into the various crop sciences related observation which we make. And then we have lined up INSET 4th series of meteorological satellites, which we are defining in collaboration with Ministry of Earth Sciences. So all these satellites will go a very long way in operationalizing. One is YesTech, as well as we are planning what we call, already we have started working on the Bharat Krishi DSS, that is decision support system, which will go a long way in helping the decision makers to arrive at the right decisions using remote sensing techniques. So this in summary is the various missions lined up as well as technologies lined up for helping Ministry of Agriculture.
So thanks a lot, sir. I think there are a lot of satellite systems from in ISRO. I think they are going to produce a numerous amount of data on the crop and biophysical parameters. I am sure that these data sets are useful for crop risk management solutions in India and elsewhere. Now for the remaining 4 panelists together, I just want to put your clear-cut views to the audience on 2 aspects. The synergy of technologies, whether it is smartphone, weather, or all those things, drones, remote sensing, synergy plus, is that possible to develop 100% technology-based insurance products in the years to come, in the next 2 to 3 years? In these 2 aspects, please give your clear-cut views to the audience, one after the other.
Clear-cut opinions, yes. I'll pick up your second question first. Is it possible to go 100% technology-oriented yield assessment and providing insurance solutions? I think technologically, yes. I'm an engineer. So I'll say technically, yes, it's possible.
It's possible, 100%
yes,
tech solution.
But,
fine.
Just in one sentence, the but. I think on the first day, the gentleman, the secretary from Rajasthan had mentioned how important it is for farmers to actually see that the crop cutting exercise has happened in front of them. And yesterday, Mr. Leto from Allianz Re also mentioned that, again, in European context too, the farmer wants the loss assessor to come to the field for a hailstorm-based damage. So we need to first win the trust of the farmer. We need to provide the data or whatever is being used, technology, make the farmer the beneficiary. Only if she understands it,
No,
then we can reach it.
Sorry for
That's all.
interrupting you. We just do the technical feasibility, technology feasibility and cost effectiveness. Can I switch over to Satish ji? So trust building we will take care from the ministry.
Yeah, so in terms of synergy, absolutely yes. I think there is a lot of complementarity between satellites and mobile phones and drones and so on. And in terms of the second question, I would say, I mean, in spite of being a technology data provider, I won't give a clear-cut yes. In a calibrated way, it is possible, and I would leave it at that.
Yes, in terms of technology, yes, again. Which is integrated with knowledge, especially coming to data-driven models. If there is no domain expertise into these models, it can really function not as expected. So 100% technology-driven solutions, but which is combined with domain expertise should be the way these models have to be released. And on the synergy, again, technologies, yes, and also from the satellite perspective, because we had a discussion on open source and paid imagery, then to create more hybrid solutions which trigger based on the complexity. So in much easier geographies to use more open source, and in much more complicated geographies to go into more higher resolution data. So this kind of a synergy, if it is built based on the complexity of the region, then for sure, yes.
I mean, I would agree with all of my colleagues, and I mean, I would even bet that, like, you know, if we're sitting together on this conference and like 3 years down the line, it would be normal for a farmer to go out in his field, detect that there's like a pink bollworm infestation that is wasting all of his harvest. He would snap an image with his smartphone, which is geo-referenced. This image is automatically analyzed. I would assume that 99.9% of all the claims can be automatically processed. We can keep humans in the loop to verify at certain stages if either the insurer or the farmer is unhappy with the result. But, you know, we do not need them in this case. These models will be more objective, and it can truly be combined with remote sensing. And we can come to a point where we are able to not only insure like 40 million of the farmers in India, which is an absolutely impressive scale, but hopefully all of them.
One quick extended question to Rob. So you have the expertise with smartphone analysis, smartphone-based pictorial analytics. So what is the possibility of having collaboration with us on a non-commercial basis?
Dr. Moti, I mean, I'm here because I'm very interested in this, right? I mean, like, and like, honestly, like, what I would love to see is like, we are developing this and like the private players pay for it, you know? We get like, let's say, a small share for every claim that we are processing automatically, the best we can. And we scale it to other countries as well.
My another quick question to Satish, Planet Labs. So what is the possibility of subsidizing Planet data for our applications to develop some cost-effective solutions in crop insurance? We are expecting heavy subsidies on data.
So I think I would be very open to say that I think subsidization is not possible, but happy to support with POC pilots. We put a lot of money in putting 200 satellites in the sky, so you know we need some money to recover those costs.
So thank you very much. I think it's very interesting discussion. And to sum up, I think we are left with 1 minute time. So it's very interesting discussion. There are a lot of offerings from the technology side. And I just want to give some offerings from ministry side. So we have our STEC, WINDS, CROPIC. This is just the beginning of technology interventions in PMFBY. So these interventions are producing huge amount of data. Followed by, we have started digital crop survey, where we have millions of photography database with us. We are sitting on the treasure of data. Therefore, you should not mind entering into non-commercial collaborations with us. We are giving oil to you. Oil is very expensive data. And we are ready to take your solutions to scale up, to take it to the end use, meaningful end use. So I request the panelists, as well as the expert agency sitting in this audience, to come up with the very, very transformative collaborations with the ministry. Don't worry about commercials, but work for the developing new solutions
We'll scale it up not only in India, outside India. Our larger goal is that to strengthen crop risk management systems in India and elsewhere. So thank you very much. I immensely thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to moderate this session. Really very, very learned panelists here, diverse expertise. Thanks once again. Thanks once again to all the panelists here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. And Dr. C.S. Murthy said it just right. That indeed was a very, very interesting session, wasn't it? Yes, absolutely. And on that note, we now move to another very interesting presentation calling upon for emerging technologies in crop loss assessment using photo analytics. We have co-founder Fasal Labs India, Shri Nikhilesh Kumar, to please come up and take on the stage. Can we please hear it for Shri Nilesh Kumar?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure and it's a great opportunity for me to be here after such a wonderful panel talking about technology and data, how it is looking forward to create impact and revolution in PMFBY. I'll be talking about some of the technology interventions, again, carrying forward from the speakers that talked about in the panel. I think they have done good base work for me. I don't need to talk about it, but I'll be just showcasing some of the works relevant to what has been done. A brief on Fasal Labs. So we are a 10-year-old company founded. I'm one of the co-founder and CEO of Climate Tech at Fasal Lab. Founded by MIT and IIT founders. Our focus has been building technology to solve problems under the climate tech umbrella. Water, agriculture is a key area where we work on, including disaster, city, and energy. We are 300 plus people today, and we are solving a global problem, and we have solutions across the globe. So speaking about how technology look forward to solve climate, I would say crop loss assessment problem. So we are discussing about crop loss, but where? In the farm. And if we are able to precisely identify where the loss has happened, what crop has been impacted, what type of loss, and if technology and data can help in that, this is going to provide or solve a lot of problems, including transparency, timeliness, large-scale monitoring, also do kind of risk assessment. So pictorial analytics is a solution, and what we are saying is there is an eye in the sky, and in last 15 years, eye in the sky satellites has added a lot of value. And in the recent 5 years with cloud computing, machine learning, it has added even more. And with eye in the field now, as mobile imagery has, taking a photo from mobile has become more accessible with a better quality, and also its reach in the remote areas has also increased. So how do you merge eye in the sky and eye in the field and create a better insight out of it? So how do we do it? Like I said, crop loss, but at a where? Farm, field. I think we need to bring eye in the sky and the AI technology to be able to individually assess the fields, and fields should be automatically present in a system allowing anybody, be it a farmer, officer, or any stakeholder, to take the last mile images and automatically tag it to the farm. So for make it happen, you need to have the fields being automatically present in the system. So let me show you some of the workflows that we have done. So this is a screen graph from our system where anywhere in India you can take a bee box and utilizing the satellite and deep neural network, it can detect the field boundaries automatically. You can save them, and government or any other customer can do it for their logins, and for the area of interest, the fields would be enabled. And then we have satellite data, which is enabling crop detection. So crop detections now can happen at a field level. But not just that, the images can directly go to the field, can get attached to the field, and with pictorial analytics, the crop is being detected and associated to the particular field from where the image was sent through geotagging, geofencing. And you can see different libraries of crops can be enabled into it. Now, once that is done, now as you go to the field, how does that translate the fields being created, crops being detected through satellite and move to the field? Now you can take images on the field, and you would be able to see where you are standing, in which field you are standing. Technology has been brought in to enter the data, but as the data comes to the cloud, it automatically also detect what kind of crop or loss has been in the image captured. And then aggregate all this data. So the field boundaries created, the crop detected from the satellite, and also any detections and analytics done through the image, and bring it into one comprehensive manner where you can see, like in this image, in this screen grab, you are seeing all the one village with all the crops being detected at an individual plot level. And you can see what kind of photo analytics is saying. So it's saying satellite also detected maize, mobile app said maize, photo analytic also detected maize, but also drought and pest damage likelihood has been detected. And then it can, you can do a validation workflow, somebody can do a validation on it. Now what we have done is we have kind of tried to democratize it to enable this technology be in the hand of anybody, wherein, let's say tomorrow you want to do a potato configuration, training of potato into the system, and potato related all diseases and adverse condition also into the system. So you can come to the system and create annotations. So this is like somebody logs in, he can create, add a new type of category of crop or disease or a combination of what analytics they want to do, and they can create training. So they can take as many thousand number of images, create annotations, and no coder, nobody expert is required to do that. Anybody in the user side can do these annotations. Once it is done, he can save these annotations and then create a training. Training can be done on a base deep neural network. He can pick from a library of different models available. And then once trained, he can see the results of how the training has happened, and he can publish it to the production, where now anybody on the ground can actually, if using a mobile app and sending an image, the pictorial analytics will pick and publish the analytics out of it. It can then do different disease detections with more zoomed up images. It can also do different loss scenarios like waterlogging, drought, damage by hailstorm, and any other type of analysis which is visually possible to see through human eye can be brought and automated into the system. Now, all these needs to be packaged into one usable solutions, and we have done that using something called, we called it Fieldwise, our platform, and we have been doing it at a scale of state. Few of our solutions have more than 1 million farmers, combining more than 40 crops, 20 plus pest and disease combinations, and a small video of what is being done. I'll just show it here.
Presenting FieldWise. FieldWise is an integrated platform to monitor agriculture with the capability to revolutionize farming, with top-tier decision support to policymakers and farmers. The platform uses AI-powered geospatial technology with an automated satellite data processing pipeline to delineate field boundaries. Users can drill down to individual fields and get insights on farmer, farm, and crops.
FieldWise helps reduce climatic risks by providing weather-smart sowing advisories based on historical cropping patterns and weather data. It offers crop detection and classification with automated AI models on remote sensing and field image data, as well as provides acreage estimation and near real-time crop health monitoring at aggregate and individual farm level. FieldWise provides insights into water stress and raises various AI-powered advisories on weather risk, as well as predicts pests and diseases. AI-based pest prediction and population growth models provide up to 2 weeks of advance warning on pest and disease occurrence at every field. It further leverages image processing and Gen AI to identify pests and support farmers.
And I upload a picture to confirm it.
Go ahead, upload the picture. Based on the image you have uploaded, it looks it is paddy leaf folder.
An inbuilt AI copilot provides farmers and agriculture officers with information related to farms, crops, and associated farming practices in the form of vernacular conversations. The copilot is percolative and easily adaptable, as it can engage with farmers and agriculture officers in their regional language.
సరే, త్రిశూర్కు వర్షపు అంచనా ప్రకారం తదుపరి కొన్ని రోజుల పాటు మీ పొలాన్ని నీటిపారుదల చేయనవసరం లేదు, ఎందుకంటే తగినంత వర్షం పడే అవకాశం ఉంది.
For the district of Alapura, the paddy seed requirement for Kharif 2024 is as follows. Normal area, in hectares, 6,300. Total seed requirement, in quintals, 6,300.
Developed as a Make in India initiative, FieldWise is versatile and can be seamlessly deployed across on-premise infrastructures, data centers, and leading cloud service providers such as Azure, Google.
So thank you.
Thank you for that. And now moving to another presentation. This one is on bundling agri-financing and insurance with input voucher systems. And for the same, we have Senior Advisor, Ethiopian Food Systems Transformation, Ethiopia. Let's hear a huge round of applause for Mr. Getachew Janfa to come up, take over this stage, and give us a nice, crisp presentation.
Good morning. It has been a wonderful 3 days for us who came from Ethiopia. I'm not sure I'm the right person on this stage now, after all the best work that India and many colleagues around the world has been presenting you. Imagine the Indian sprinters is Ethiopia's baby step. So I hope you can live with that. Couple of things before I go into the context, a few things that I want to share with you. The first thing is, I just want to complete the story of the Indian Ministry of Agriculture name, the farmers' welfare. That farmers' welfare is only half of the story. In the good old days, when we learned economics, economic efficiency was dominant. Welfare was kind of by the way. It's a waste of time and resources. The half story is our own welfare. If farmers don't produce, our welfare will be affected. So I think we are doing ourselves a favor by addressing farmers. So for my Indian brothers and sisters, I think that understanding and completing that story is very important. So what I'm going to share with you is that we are put on fire by being here for the last 3 days. Next week, we have our national conference on financial services for Ethiopia. What a coincidence. We are fully armed, strengthened by the lessons that we are learning and the many technologies, especially that we saw this morning and we've been introduced to the last 2.5 days, and this is the 3rd day. So what I'm going to do is setting a little bit of the context where we are coming from, which in Ethiopia, the way we came to recognize the financial service to smallholder farmers and farming community as a whole, I'm using the word financial service to imply both the credit system and the insurance at the same time. So that's what we are referring to. We are coming to it from a broad transformative agenda, what we call the Ethiopian food systems. In that, I don't want to take you through that process, but we've identified 24 game-changing solutions for Ethiopia to transform Ethiopia's food systems. Out of those 24, 6 are truly transformative, critical enablers. If nothing else fails, if we focus on 6 of the critical enablers, Ethiopia will find itself somewhere else. And one of them is the financial services that I'm going to talk slightly and taking it forward. And the second is the selection and timely supply of inputs, technologies to boost production, productivity. And the third is rural electrification and crop-based crop and livestock insurance, implement land reform, and introduce land use planning. These are the critical elements that we identified. So next week, when many national institutions, government, public institutions, development partners, NGOs, and private sector are going to come together to look at where we are and what policy measures, what technical articulation needs to happen. So that's where we are. One of the learning that we put in place was over the last decade and a half, many NGOs, donors, including some of the insurance companies, have engaged in some organic and experimental risk insurance. And they were conducted entirely without the government becoming aware of or awakening to it. They've been nudging the government, but we've not been up to the speed with them. So as we now moving and looking forward, many national agenda items are taking place in which the financial services, especially the agricultural insurance, as an ecosystem will happen. So what we learn from the many experimental projects has been they set a scene, they set an agenda. Even when there is no legal backdrop, there is no consistent, coherent guideline how to do them. And each donor, each project was happening in its own right. Some of the projects my colleagues have mentioned were linked to input supply and ensured that the risk is, in case of crop failure, the farmer is insured. And each one of them were kind of mutually exclusive of each other. And there was no long-term, even if we are talking about 10, 15 years, none of them are on a timeline to say what awareness was created, how was it done, the risk pooling, the economies of scale, and all of these were not aggregated. By the way, this is not a fault or a critique of the project themselves. This speaks to Ethiopia's government. We should have been much more diligent, much more specific, be aware of it, and start learning lessons from early on. So I think what we are taking now with us is the experimental project themselves have really brought out very important lessons for Ethiopia. Even if we are not in control, even if we did not learn early on, the lessons for us very, very clear that we need policies, programs to scale up and learn from them. In terms of the technologies that have been applied over the years, the satellite modeling has been used intermittently, and area yield crop estimate has been used, and many of the farmers were unaware of, it was not clear to them what it meant and how that insurance was covered. And also there was a mixed approach, some 100% underwritten the entire process, some somehow ensured that farmers contributed to it. So I think the lesson for us is that especially in the early today, what role government plays over the last 2 years, it is crucial that the government must sit in the driving seat, must lead such efforts, must ensure that lessons and investment that is made in a number of projects and programs are part of the national agenda. So what I'm going to say is today, we have taken note of it, we've learned from it. It is in many ways for Ethiopia, what they have brought to us is that they really navigated the uncharted waters, and it is up to us as Ethiopians to learn from it and move forward with. So next week, when we get together, we will be taking all of these lessons and take the Ethiopia's financial services to Ethiopian smallholder farmers, which 95% of Ethiopian farmers are smallholder farmers. It's only 5% or thereabout who are commercial farmers. So again, we are looking forward to working with our Indian brothers and sisters and elsewhere who are in this platform to learn from you in the good spirit of South and South cooperation. Thank you very much.
Mr. Getachew, thank you so much. We do move towards our last but definitely not the least panel discussion. I do want to make an announcement here that as we know, tea and coffee is on and we've had a late breakfast, and due to paucity of time, we're not taking an official tea break, but if you do need that dose of caffeine, quickly go grab yourselves a cup, but come right back in because we now head to a very deep discussion on advancing inclusive agri-insurance and agri-financing programs. And to dive deep into this with the best of best experts, we have with us Head Inclusive Growth, UNDP India, Shri Amit Kumar, to moderate the session. Can we please welcome him with a huge round of applause? And calling up our esteemed panelists, we have Additional Secretary and CEO, NRLPS, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, Shri Charanjit Singh. With a round of applause, calling, thank you, Adjunct Professor at SIPA Columbia University, USA, Ms. Barbara Magnoni. Let's hear it for Barbara. Also calling upon Inclusive Finance Specialist, World Bank, Shri Amit Arora. And Inclusive Insurance Specialist, UNDP, Mr. Miguel Solana. A very fine panel we have here. And let's get a deeper understanding of advancing inclusive agri-insurance and agri-financing programs with the best of best.
Hello. Thanks a lot, Pooja. And I know you have been here for almost, some of you 3 days, some of you 1.5 days. And this session is something last of such a long conference. Many of you have been listening to so many experts, a little kind of tired, and looking that's also, that's when do we get free to do some other work. But rest assured, we are going to have an interesting discussions. We have a very stellar and distinguished panel. And what we have been listening, not only yesterday and today, but also in the community of practice, one theme which has been coming again and again, and all of us have been talking about, is how do we focus on inclusion, right? So inclusion of small and marginal farmers, inclusion of women, and all other groups who are left behind when we are designing the insurance and financing a product. So on that note, first of all, I also extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of the panel. And a few key points which I just wanted to kind of reiterate for us, and specifically all of you who are here, just to kind of get the bigger picture right before I invite the panel members for their opening remarks and trying to see these points. So yesterday there was a session also, a specific session on inclusive business model and products. And Pranav, I think you made that point in the question and answer. That's okay. We are talking about so many things. We are designing things, we are changing things, but are we really keeping the farmers for whom we are doing? Do we know what they really want? And therefore, in this session, we are not going to talk so much about technology. We are not going to talk so much about product. What we are going to talk, that whatever we have discussed, deliberated so far in the last 2.5 or 3 days, that's how do we make sure that it is really inclusive? And the focus would be more on the human-centric design. That's how do we put the farmers or the target group at the center of the whole, whether we are doing a product design, whether we are looking into the delivery channels, whether we are looking into the partnership model. So how do we keep that human-centric design element into the whole discussions and how it is going to help us? A few, again, kind of taking away many of the things that we have discussed during the last 2 and 3 days. And I'm just going to kind of get into that one. So what is the good thing is that there is a growing recognition and interest among almost all the countries for creating inclusive agri-insurance and financing products. So that's definitely a big tick. We have listened to so many countries that they are doing their bit, whether it's a baby step, whether it is an infant stage, but everyone is kind of interested. Second important thing is also that, and even just before the session, which was led by Dr. Murthy, we heard about so many new technology and others. And technology definitely is a great enabler for us to really get into that directions. However, Jan in his opening, I think, remarks, he already kind of given us quite a bit of data. I'm just going to add one more data which came out from a GIZ study, I think 2 years back, where they studied 32 LMIC countries, lower middle income countries. And one of the key starking findings was that less than a tenth of farmer had any type of agricultural insurance in the 32 countries that they studied. So despite the growing interest from the government, despite technology being an enabler, we have long miles to go. And this data, when we're talking about 1/10 of farmer, that definitely exclude India and China because there we already are quite a high into the coverage percentage. When we are looking into the technology, I think the fact that's 2 points before I come to the panel members is technology is developed mostly still by men because women still are very few in the larger STEM domain. And as a man, all of us carry certain, as a human, we carry conscious and unconscious biases. But when you are looking from a men perspective, definitely, and if I am designing the project, how do we ensure that my unconscious biases don't get into the technology design which creates further digital and a technological divide? So that's something kind of for a reference point for our panel members to get into. And I'm looking at this panel basically in a 2 round of kind of going through all of you. First, the common questions to all. As a kind of opening remark for you trying to look into, and when we look into this whole inclusive insurance and financing segment, one of the key point always keeps on coming, that's how do you ensure the sustainability and profitability of the overall, it's sustainable for the government, it's profitable for the insurance company, it's also something that does not stop after a year or 2. So looking into this sustainability and profitability challenges, so in your opinion, what are these? And how do you think that taking a human-centric design is going to really help us in addressing this concern? So that's something common for all the panels. And if Barbara, I could, because you are just next to me, could really start with you.
Hello. Great. Can I just, before even answering your question, say thank you very much for having me, but also thank you so much for not saying ladies first. That was very good.
No, you're just next to me, so that's why.
I am often introduced that way, and it's very frustrating. So I appreciate that very much. And to your question, we have low penetration of insurance globally in lower income markets. And when we dig a little bit deeper at the actual penetration itself, we can see that a lot, I think we were looking at, in the latest microinsurance landscape, about 40% of this penetration, I'm very easily distracted by noises. It's okay. 40% of this penetration is through sort of the microfinance or financial sector players. And then there's another 20% or so through agents. And so what I mean to say by that is that sometimes insurers are just kind of doing the easy thing, right? They're offering mandatory, compulsory products or automatic, which is kind of a voluntary product that you don't really have much choice about, through channels that are already offering loans to clients without really thinking about value, because the client can't really say no, even if it is a voluntary product. And so there's no need to offer value. And that works. The insurance company makes money, the distribution channel makes money, everybody makes money. It works for everybody, but sometimes the final client, it doesn't work for. You're not creating value. And if you're not creating value for that final client, you're not building a market, right? You're just kind of staying where you are, having some profits, meeting some targets, but you're not building a market. You're not convincing consumers that there's value in this product. You're not growing with that consumer. You're not learning from the consumer and trying to meet their needs through the protection mechanism that is insurance. And I think, in very broad terms, that's the problem, that the majority of insurers are still using these models that are very simple, that are very easy, that don't require thinking outside the box, doing new kinds of work, hiring new kinds of people, engaging in new spaces, because they can.
Thanks, Barbara. So, sir, if I can come to you after this, Mr. Singh. You are leading the whole National Rural Livelihood Mission Program, Ministry of Rural Development, and when we're talking about farmers' welfare, or and there is a kind of quite a close relationship between the rural development and farmers' resilience. So how do you see this space of inclusive financing, insurance, and definitely NRLM has played a sterile role in, specifically when we try to see it from the women's economic empowerment point view, with quite a huge network of self-help groups and also facilitating the whole financial linkages. So from your perspective, how do you see this whole human-centric design element, the importance of, not only from the insurance point of view, but also even when we are designing the public support programs per se for the financial resilience and inclusion, what would be your take, sir?
Good morning, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to express my views. So first of all, I feel that the financial literacy is very critical. And we need to work on this aspect, and we are already working on this. Like we have prepared 6 modules to sensitize our women members, those who are the members of the SHGs. So what do we cover in that? We cover that the topics of saving, credit, what type of credit is available in the market, what type of products are available, then insurance and pensions, then digital transactions, then financial planning, then household budgeting and goal setting. So these things are very important, that one should know that how much one is earning and where does one want to go, and then how one can go there, and what are the criticalities in that. If one suffers some loss, etc., then insurance comes into picture. So I feel that first of all, this awareness, sensitization, education about the insurance is very critical. Then only then I can take an informed decision that what type of insurance should I take or not take, and what are the products available in the market. So that is the first part. And the second part I feel is that the community can play a very critical role in that. Because member is one thing, but when we have the organizations like SHG, VOs, village organizations and cluster level federation, then they facilitate it. I'm just giving you one example why I'm saying this. There are 3 products of the government in the individual insurance. This Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, and the Atal Pension Yojana. And you will be quite happy to know that our 70% of the members are covered under this insurance product. So how did this happen? We have got a very strong community cadre. We call them community resource person. We trained them and we sensitized them, and then they spread out across the country, and then they sensitize the community that these are the benefits available and how you can take the benefit of these schemes. So this is one part. And the second thing I wanted to emphasize is that, and this is also very good news, and yesterday only we had one meeting with the Indian Banks Association, where we have finalized one uniform application form for the individual entrepreneurship. Because now there were so many forms. If I go to one bank, then there is a different form. If I go to another bank, there is a... So it creates so many complications. So I am quite hopeful that within the next 10 days, we are going to launch this common uniform application form, so which can be utilized by any individual to access the loans from the banks. So I think we need to work both on the demand side and supply side so that these things can be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Amit, if I can come with the same question, and you, not only from India perspective, but also wearing the hat of the World Bank, larger agri and finance. So what's your take on that?
Thanks, Amit. I'll only give an example and amplify what Charanjit sir mentioned. We are a small partner in the NRLM program that we have. First of all, simply put, human-centered design, first and foremost, means putting yourself in the shoes of the person for whom the product is being designed, and that implies empathy. So if you put that at the center, I think we'll have far more better designed products. Currently, how the products are designed, it's a supply-side initiative, as you mentioned in your initial remarks, the bias that come in. And then there are, pressures of profit and so on and so forth. By the way, when I read your note and it said sustainability and profitability in inclusive finance and insurance, I almost felt that was an oxymoron. How do you make it happen? Beats me. All of this is sustainable because government steps in, and says we'll afford most of the cost. Then it becomes sustainable. If you take it out of the picture, it's just not sustainable. It may still be profitable, but it will definitely not be scalable and sustainable. So, but if you consider government's contribution, public good contribution as part of the overall ecosystem building and sustainability, then it's sustainable. I'll give one example of how the human-centered design approach comes. We've been talking of technology and public-private partnerships. My learning has been PPCP, public-private community participation. And one example of this was during COVID. We all went through a very, very difficult phase, pandemic. Thanks to NRLMs being very, proactive in trying to address the situation to the extent the system allowed. We jointly designed in few districts an initiative where some money was given to federations. And this money was to respond to the unfortunate incidents. Women who had availed policies under life insurance, Jeevan Jyoti scheme, if there was an unfortunate incident, the federation was given small money, which is called, it's like a capital grant for rotation purpose, that if this unfortunate incident happens, money can be given immediately, no question asked, for last rites and related activities. I think if I remember correctly, 10,000 rupees or so from the federation to the SHG member, without waiting for the insurance company to do the payout. Payout would take time. It doesn't happen in an automated fashion. There are compliances to be done. And that stemmed from understanding of the community, the empathy that you bring to the table, and the role that you make the community play, and the confidence that you have. That is an element I think we could capture in a lot of products and service delivery arrangements that we have, and would be very, very useful. I'll pause there, but that's broadly what I would want to say.
No, thanks a lot, because we definitely want to come again to you, and then definitely want to go to the audience, because this being the last session, I think Kamnaji would allow me to take 2 or 3 questions, right? So thank you. Miguel, to you.
Well, thank you very much for still being here. And I will come back to this point, and I think the conference reflects exactly what has been happening. First, we spent quite a bit of time talking around sort of the risk transfer, or like the risk carrying mechanisms, and how different countries, and I think being in India makes us reflect, like, what are the other models in the world that we need to transfer risk? And we've talked about insurance pools in some countries, like Tanzania is thinking about, like Uganda has done, Turkey, Spain, and so on. We think, for example, model that Senegal thought around, for example, creating a national insurance company that takes care only of agriculture insurance. We think around like creating national reinsurers, like, for example, India, Mexico, China have done, and so on. So we've spent time talking about that. Then we think about the delivery model. We think a lot about all these technologies that you're using, all these solutions that are coming up to go to measure yields on the ground and so on. And it's actually at the last moment that we're thinking on the client. And the logic of the conference taking us here, and here we are, we're the last session where we're putting the clients first. So exactly this process that we saw during the conference, the process in which this industry has evolved. We thought around like all this importance of creating the mechanisms to transfer risk because people need it, all this importance of having the business models right, and we all want to learn around that. But the moment that we had to give the farmers the voice around that, we're leaving that at the last moment. And I think this is a paradigm that we have to change. This is exactly the element that why these mechanisms work, because governments allow us to scale up, because it's an easy business. But the reality is that we need to start creating mechanisms to listen to our farmers, to understand our farmers. And from this perspective, actually, last year from UNDP, we launched a guide that we call it the Inclusive Insurance Navigator, in which we saw this need of giving you, and I would say by talking to you, giving you as insurers, you as government programs, you as distributors, a tool, straightforward, with all these different tools that already exist out there to be able to understand your farmers. And we talk about going and speak to your farmers. We already have a lot of information. Actually, we have primary data that is being collected from the government perspective, some statistical institutions, from the technology that you're using and so on. How can we translate this technology? How can we use the agents that are already talking to all these farmers that we're trying to serve? And finally, how can we go directly and learn to talk to farmers? Because they speak I wouldn't say we speak the same language, we speak differently. So how can we find the ways to do these processes? So I believe we're at a moment, and maybe it's been natural how this has evolved, because we needed to have these risk carriers, we needed to have these distribution channels, we needed to have all these products. But now it's a moment where we can change. If we want to believe in creating business models, this is the models where we need to go back to those farmers that are serving, and we need to understand the context in which they live, the context in which they're framing their agricultural practice in their overall livelihood. We need to understand their aspirations, because the moment when we see that, that's a moment where we will be able to provide them with something that makes sense for them, that can be adopted, and then on the other side can be driving the business models that we're talking about that.
Thank you, Miguel, and I think this definitely we would be, and I think most of us here sitting would love to understand a little bit more about your inclusive insurance navigator, which you talked about. Definitely, we don't have the time to talk much here, but definitely would encourage colleagues to get hang of you when you are on the lunch break or tea to really get more detail. Amit, if I can just come back again quickly to you. And sir, we talked about the larger issue of human-centric design, and specifically the work that's bank has been doing, where the focus is on engendering all the investment. Your own experience working and with the Ministry of Rural Development also. So what are the key barriers and biases, if we start looking at it from the women perspective, that she faces while accessing, whether it is the financial product, whether it is insurance product? So how do you see that? And sir already mentioned about the importance of financial literacy being the key enabler. But again, if you take into the whole idea of sticking to the point of human-centric design, are there any specific point where we could do something more than what we are already doing on the whole agenda of financial and digital literacy?
Sure, Amit. This is a complex subject. There are, unconscious biases.
But you don't have so much time to...
Yeah. Yeah, I won't get into the details. There are unconscious biases. For example, when we say nurse, what comes to your mind? A female, a woman, right? But if we say a healthcare worker, that image doesn't crop up again. So that's an unconscious bias. So that biases need to be addressed. And then there are social biases. I'll give one example. About a decade or so back, we were trying to address this financial inclusion, gender-specific financial inclusion. This was before PMJDY, where it was, the numbers are very obvious. Much less women were having bank accounts, were using bank accounts. So we did a study, went to deep parts of Uttar Pradesh, where there are social barriers and biases, to figure out what the challenge is. Women say, we can't deal with men. I am not going to go to a bank branch. I'm not going to show my face to click a photo. Now, how do you address that? We figured out the answer is probably make women a female agent. Went to the bankers, and bankers said, female agent doesn't work, doesn't sound good, because there's going to be use of technology, there is an issue of mobility. We did a pilot with about 20-25 women. It seemed to be working. It took very long. We took this to, again, NRLM, and NRLM lapped it up. And at that point of time, there were hardly any women agents. And thanks to NRLM, in about 4 to 5 years, there are 125,000 women agents in the country coming from NRLM support. Our learning was to start with, if a woman goes to a women agent, she's more than happy to, make mistakes, ask questions, open a bank account, and come back for servicing also. And this could be in the middle of the night. That's the comfort, the confidence she needs. And this worked very, very well. So, you have to look at specifics one by one and try and then unwrap it and come to an answer. So there is no template or a shortcut to it.
Thanks, Amit. Barbara, because Amit talked about the
women agents.
Women agency.
ladies.
So I'll come to you specifically on, first if you could spend your 30 seconds also on kind of demystifying the whole human-centric design. And coming to that, in what way we can really make sure that gender-specific requirements are integrated into the product design, delivery channels, etc.
Thanks. I might flip those two if that's okay. And just kind of piggybacking off this issue of women agents. Having women agents, I run a network of women agents in Mexico, not only helps women, but it helps men. Because often men don't want to admit that they don't understand to another man. And they are comfortable talking to women. So it's not only inclusive of women, but it's inclusive of everyone who may have some challenges with literacy, with understanding, with usability, et cetera. And sort of to step back from that, one of the things that we promote a lot is leadership, not just agents, but leadership of programs by women. Because if you want to be truly inclusive, you need to show your clients that you believe in women. And if you don't have women in your senior leadership, on your boards, in your management, you don't believe in women. So you're not actually sending the message to your end users and your end clients that you believe. So that's the first step. If you don't have that, you're just showing, you're just meeting targets, right? You're not really believing. And that's what I would say is kind of step one. Once you figure all that out, the kind of governance issue, then you can have voices of women and voices of clients come up to design programs and products that really meet their needs and accommodate them. And it doesn't always have to be dramatic differences between men and women, right? If I'm a farmer, I'm a farmer. The thing I care about, I want to talk about the most is my crop. That my differences exist, but they're not the primary issue I want to focus on. But there are differences. So going back to the human-centered design question, there are many tools. I actually will just kind of piggyback off of Miguel and say, read the Navigator. I can't get into all the tools right now. There are many tools you can use that are qualitative, quantitative, secondary research, et cetera. And the important thing is to have diverse groups and analysis that really try to shed some of the biases that we all hold inside of us when we're analyzing the data. Because even with all the data you have, you can misinterpret the information if you don't keep your mind open to understanding what people really mean. We like to frame the barriers in sort of three groups. So women have a higher marginal utility of money. It's not more risk averse. We have less money, we have more to lose. Therefore, we measure our risk based on that formula. It's a slightly different formula than men. Doesn't mean we're afraid of risk. It just means that we have more to lose because we're poorer, and we have fewer sources of cushion, yeah? The second thing is agency. It's very important to build agency into these programs, and privacy is part of that. We don't control assets, we don't control power in the household. And so recognizing that when you're building programs is very, very important. And then finally, literacy, understanding, awareness, all the things that we've talked about here. So a program that covers those things is going to really take into account those elements that women may differ from men, and not just women, but other excluded groups in thinking about it. So I'll give a couple of really quick examples. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. But one is in Mexico, we worked on a pilot that was trying to include women farmers into an insurance program. So on the first part about the lower marginal utility, we've all talked about it a million times, subsidy, right? You make the cost zero, it brings everybody in, you don't have that barrier as much. On the second issue of agency, we allowed women to show up representing the farm, even though the title holder was a man, which allowed them agency and control over the process of enrollment and being part of the program. And then on the literacy side, included explanation, included women agents as well, but the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations through groups, which is less expensive than one-on-one, and do digital enrollment, but through agents and not directly for women. And that was a way to get women on board, and we had equal participation of men and women in the program as a result. So I'll stop with that one just because there's not much time.
Thank you, Barbara. And Miguel, that brings me to you before I go to Sir. You talked about this whole inclusive insurance navigator, and if I remember right, inclusive insurance is one of the track under IRFF, one of the 5 key focus track. We were also discussing outside somewhere that you have some study coming on inclusive insurance, which you're planning to do or you have already done and about to launch. So I'll come to the study later, but first I think building on what Barbara concluded with a Mexico example, based on your work from the IRFF, are there specific successful schemes, program, approaches at a country level which you would like to bring in, where the whole element of keeping the farmer or woman at the center of every process, from the design to delivery to partnership, has been kept in mind, and that has really helped the program to achieve the inclusion from the beginning?
Maybe I will flip a little bit and trying to include something. Everybody's flipping. No, I think that after this conversation that's having, I mean, I would like to introduce something that we're thinking about, and it's really, really important. We need to start knowing how we're doing with the programs that we have. And we need to start then using the information or collecting information or creating tools. And there's been sometimes, and in our world, there's been an obsession about understanding the contract reliability for agriculture insurance and so on, but never did we try to understand what are the other elements that can we be doing? How can we more easily measure the impact that we're having, the inclusion that we're having, and all this different, I would say, should we say, experience that our farmers are having with our programs. And therefore, I think this is our next challenge. If we want to start taking action on these gender elements, we need to understand how we're doing into what we're doing now. So I think that is something that we want to get started. We want to move away from the contract elements, and we want to be moving into how to do this. And testing it and getting public, discussing about it, and so on. Do we have programs? I think we have work in a couple of initiatives when we started for products that were targeting rural women. So for example, in Guatemala, we had something around using products that are helping women to save. And then how can we then integrate insurance into these products? But these products that are a success is the products where we're starting from this gender perspective from the beginning. And I think that's great. I think we can find the entry points. I think savings is always a great example on how can you get the insurance working, or certain elements of financing and so on. So Guatemala is a good example on how can you scale up this kind of products. But I still believe that if we want to get to the scale that we need to create the resilience that we talk about, to protect the investments that we as, I would say, as societies are doing into our rural populations, we need to start understanding what we're doing in our main programs, understand the failures that we have in these programs, and then fix, or sometimes I will have to say we need to introduce the gender element, because I think in general, when I got this, I don't think we're doing it. It's not there yet. I think we don't really have it. And this is why we're working from a development perspective. How can we provide you the tools, the elements that allow you to understand how to do it, but also how to assess what you're doing?
Fair enough. I think we are still a work in progress, and all of us have to collectively work. I think that's the point which you are making. So if I can again come back to you, and we talked about NRLM as a major success program, and we also talked about, you specifically flagged the thing about the bringing the whole element of community cadre, financial literacy. But if we try to look at it maybe two step back from the NRLM as a design perspective, right? Are there specific design elements that you would like to kind of suggest which could be potentially integrated in something like agri-insurance across the globe? If you have some reflection on that.
Certainly. So before I come to your question, I will just like to add to the figures given by Amit Arora. No, he mentioned around 1.25 lakh banking correspondents are there. And we started this scheme in 2017-18. And you will be surprised to note the amount dealt by these women is more than 1 lakh crore. This is a humongous amount. So this money has been taken from the banks to the doorstep of the poor woman. And some of the success stories are really worth mentioning. Like this one lady, she is from Guwahati. She goes to one island that is in Brahmaputra. She takes the boat, goes to the village and does all the banking transactions. So inclusiveness, so this is the inclusiveness I feel that these types of innovations we need which can ensure the innovation. This is the first thing I wanted to mention. Second thing I wanted to mention about the inclusiveness one more. So dealing in English and Hindi is one thing, but I think we need to go to the regional language, not regional language, local language. So I will give you just one instance. I happened to go to one village in Dindori district in Madhya Pradesh. It's very interior. And I went to one village where this Baga community lives. So Baga are not tribal, they are PVTGs, primitive and vulnerable tribal groups. So I was surprised to know that they were listening to the community radio which was transmitting some program in their local language. So that is the impact. So if you want to ensure the insurance, you need to go to their local language. Exactly what do they speak? How do they interact? So making one shoe that fits all, I think that is not possible. So that will be my suggestion that we need to take the feedback loop from the community. The demand may be different in this Goa and Haryana, but they will be much, much different in the deep interior areas of Madhya Pradesh where tribal communities live. So that will be my second suggestion. And the third, just I will take 1 more minute, not more than that.
No, we have time. We are doing very good.
No, I think the time is very less. But there is so much things are to be shared, I think, which need to be told, which you mentioned about the insurance. I think these products, they need to be very flexible also. Sometimes I may not be able to pay the amount immediately. Like I need to pay the premium 1,000 rupees, but I don't have the money. Maybe my crop will come, then the funds will come, then I can make some part payment, then sometime. So I think we need to be flexible with our products also as per the need of the community. Like you mentioned about that we paid to the member immediately from our community funds. So why don't we involve these community institutions? They can act as the intermediary between the insurance companies and the beneficiaries. So I think we need to look at this also. Thank you.
Amit, I'm being greedy. Can I add to one
Yeah,
more point
please,
here?
go ahead.
Since the leadership of the 2 largest ministries is here. Sir, you yesterday mentioned about the gender gap in, let's say, KCC. Land ownership, that's an inherent gap, and then that leads to gap in credit. If I may suggest, given the power of community networks of NRLM, if you could leverage the services of what is known as Bima Sakhi for Fasal Bima Yojana for women land-owning farmers, these community cadres would reach out door to door, figure out whether you've taken this or not, and create awareness and make this happen at near zero cost. That's one example. Similarly for KCC, They have bank Sakhis and what they call as BC Sakhis, who provide similar doorstep banking services. Half of them are also CSC VLEs. Now going forward, digital KCC can also hopefully happen through those. So if this women cadre becomes your extension worker also, I'm very convinced the gender gap in KCC and allied services would get bridged, because they bring in that community ownership, they bring in that empathy, and very low cost, very trustworthy element of service delivery to the table, and both put together can be a very lethal weapon.
So Amit, you stole my thunder. That's the point which I wanted to suggest of SHG network and the bank Sakhis. Thank you for thank you for that. So I think before coming back to the panel for their concluding remark, as promised and as approved by Kamna ji, I'm looking at her, we can have 2 or 3 questions if you want to directly address to any of the panelists.
Getting these last mile connections right. And first of all, let me comment on the kind of impact that the ministry is having through this Bima Sakhis and other SHG based, community based workers. So, sir, do you have a platform where they are all available? Is it something which we could directly say, we in the ministry already have a aid app which is developed for ground level, actual field level enrollment, and we could quickly probably, join these 2 platforms? And do you have some kind of a scheme where they are incentivized in any form to do a enrollment or do a particular job? For example, what comes to mind is that 2 or 3 processes, which is one is enrollment and the second is maybe in cropic, where we will be taking photographs of the field. They could actually go and do the photography for us. So do you have, one, a platform for them, and 2, do you have some kind of a provision for a mobile to be given, or is it left to them?
We have got the details of all these community resource persons, so that can be integrated. I will just give you one example how we can work together, so that may help you also in collaborating. So we have done a very good collaboration with the Department of Animal Husbandry, where we have got these Pashu Sakhis, and we exchanged the notes with the department, and they felt that there were certain gaps. So they designed one module of 16 days. So they trained our Pashu Sakhis on that module, and then they were certified as extension agents of the Department of Animal Husbandry. And then they specified also that if they do this work, this much honorarium or amount will be given. So they specified that also. And some of those honorariums were very less and specified in the 2013-14. Now they've revised that also, so that they get a reasonable amount. So we have got a very good strength. And then we mapped these Pashu Sakhis also, that where do the Department of Animal Husbandry needs them. Though that has also been done. And if there are no Pashu Sakhis in some villages, we have selected our more SHG members and we are training them also. So this type of collaboration can take place.
Any other questions or comments? Kamna ji. But sir, while Kamna ji is getting the mic, community resource persons are being leveraged by many other programs also. And if, Amit, please correct me, they are getting some amount also from the ministry, right? So they get something, and for other department and other program use their services, so that creates the additional income for her also.
There is no platform like CSC.
वो नहीं है.
To handle the transaction that. So maybe we are also willing to provide some kind of incentive to them. But to a CSC agent, it is very easy for us to do that provisioning. So that to maybe for enrollments.
Amit.
We require some kind of a digital platform to.
So in case of NRLM, there are certain things which are decentralized, left to the federal state, and there are localized answers. It's not a centralized system. But incidentally, half of bank sakis of NRLM are actually CSC VLEs. So that's a partnership between NRLM and CSC. They have created a sub-architecture. CSC has created a sub-architecture for NRLM, given the large mass that NRLM brings to the table. And the data management is with the CSC. They can give gender disaggregated information pertaining to the business done by NRLM CSC VLEs. So that's the kind of partnership there is. And it's a two-step. You want only specific product, there are NRLM Sakhis who are doing only banking services. If you wanted to go beyond banking services and do more G2C services, there are NRLM Sakhis who are doing banking services plus also. So those variations can be built into any platform, even if NRLM doesn't have it, they can ride onto your platform. As Sir said, they have all the repository database of these functionaries. Depending upon the service that needs to be plugged in, the set of functionaries can be added to that network or to that platform.
Amit, two questions related to
Before
this.
you, Ajay, I think Kamnaji wanted to ask something, so
I don't want to
don't
ask
jump the
anything.
queue.
Yes, but I would like to add what Amit ji said. He said that there are inherent biases when we talk about, I would say, gender representations of women coming out. I'll just share my experience. So I was on a visit for a crop insurance week in a very interior village of a village in Haryana. So women are not used to coming out, but seeing a lady, as he said that if ladies are agent in bank, then I think even all the stakeholders, whether it's government or insurance companies, I think if females can step out and meet the females there, that's a very good idea, because I have seen myself, when I was there, a lot of women who are used to, I would say, even some, the Parda system and other things, other taboos like that. And it was surprising that they were aware about insurance, some not. But yes, when I spoke about claims, that whether anybody from your family got claims, they said yes. So that means they are aware of the things, but yes, as he said that they are generally shy or maybe social restrictions also. So not only, I would say, employees like banks, but even I would say insurance companies or I think other allied stakeholders are also required to move out on the fields so that we can have more women on board. They want to come out, but yes, there are certain restrictions. So just wanted to add to what you said. Thank you.
Specific to your inputs, do we have the identification of those 50% Bima Sakhis who are CSC VLEs as of now, so that we can segregate, because we are already working with CSC network to maybe have a specialized focus of hand-holding and capacity building for CSC Bima Sakhis who are CSC VLEs? And what about the rest of the 50%? Do we have anywhere the segregated data? How do we integrate
Yes,
those
yes, all
50%
data is
also?
available. It's absolutely granular data available, static data as well as transactional data, who is doing what kind of business where. All of this is available, and this is fairly, real time, if I may say so. This gets updated on a monthly basis, in some cases even at a shorter frequency, so very much available.
Thank you. So it's time to come back to all of you for your final concluding comments, any 30-second, 40 seconds intervention, but be quick and crisp.
So I wanted to piggyback off of Kanma's point and this recent conversation here to say, we often say the problem is women don't understand and we try to solve it with financial literacy. And the problem may be your product, it may be your process. All these processes that sound so fancy and so efficient may not be user-friendly, may not be effective, may not be efficient, and you're not asking your women clients what the problem is, how they feel about it, and if this product and process adds value to their lives. If you don't start there, all these conversations will end in failure.
Miguel.
I think I will move on the opportunity that we have. I think insurance will make sense financially. if it achieves scale. And that's where we have been obsessed on trying to get the government on board and so on. I think it is time to think that also we will be able to achieve scale if we do things that make sense to our clients, if we understand what they're needing, the products and so on. So can we use this idea of farmer centricity as an opportunity to drive scale, to build our business models on these needs? So I guess this complements what Barbara is saying. I mean, we need to pay attention more around how things are perceived, how do these things work in people's lives, what are the differences that our products are making in their everyday lives, in their financial decisions and so on. When we do that, maybe our business models will achieve even more scale than trying to always force it on the government being able to provide resources in order to drive this business.
So I will just give one suggestion that if something is owned by the community, then the success is 100%. Then it's not dependent on some individual or some government official or somebody else. No, I will give you just one more example on my parting note. So like what we do when we make the self-help groups, we move the women from some areas where they are already very good SHG members, like in Andhra, Telangana, etc. They are very good. Now we are forming self-help groups in Ladakh region. So we have moved these women from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana to Ladakh. They stay in those villages only. And you know, Telangana and Ladakh are totally different. Ladakh is very cold. So these women feel very cold and wear some very heavy woolen clothes, etc. And they don't know the language. Thoda tutti-putti Hindi mein baat karti hain. But you will be surprised to note, they will sit there for whole night singing some songs from Ladakh, some Telangana. So the bonding between women, it's at a different level altogether. So this has been the secret. I think the community is the main thing.
Amit, anything from your side, parting note?
I yesterday read a slide which said women need development, and there was a cross. And the next line said development needs women, and there was a tick box. That was very striking.
Well said. So can I request you for a huge round of applause for such a stellar and distinguished panel. While they were speaking, I have kind of created 2 pages of notes. In view of the time paucity, I'm not going to kind of make an attempt to summarize what has been discussed, but 2 or 3 key, I think the key words which I'm just kind of going to highlight for our reference. One is definitely the importance of what has been highlighted is the community. How do you leverage the existing community cadre, and specifically this I am talking about in India's context, but even in other countries there are self-help group and those kind of initiatives. So how do you really leverage the existing network for all other different service provisioning? So that's one. The importance of empathy, I think Barbara, you brought that point. And Amit, I really like this whole, again, linked to the community is PPCP. So that's something, and Miguel, we have a long way to go, and we collectively have to work together. I think one small suggestion, if I can take the liberty of holding the mic. Since yesterday, and not even before yesterday, I think last 3 days, whenever we talk about farmer, all of us, we have been using him, he. So can we take this as a, let's say, that's in future when we start addressing farmer, we can use she or he, him and her. And I think the point which Amit talked about, that healthcare worker and nurse. So how do we, these are the small minor things, but this also relates to the conscious and unconscious biases that we kind of carry. And for us, farmers is always something that we associate with male. So we need to kind of become a more proactive in even talking and communicating what we want the whole ecosystem to evolve. Thank you very much for your kind attentions, and won't hold you for any second longer. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Amit ji, and the entire panel. Thank you for really bringing to the forefront those very, very valuable insights. And also thank you for stirring up some conversation here and for getting our august audience to become even more participative. And I think it is exactly on that note where we can say that from our previous deliberations also. If there are any thoughts, any ideas, any views, any feedback, any questions, now would be a great time to shoot them up. Kamna ma'am and Ajay sir, it would be lovely if you could stir this question and answer session in exactly the direction that it needs to go in. These are amazing opportunities where we have not just the best of best from the national, but from the international scene. And this is a great time to seize the opportunity to get real-time feedback, answers, and solutions. Absolutely anyone? Yes, we have a hand there.
So I think we can take the questions for session 1, which was on the role and experiences of development partners in de-risking, and the session 2, which was on technology infusion in agriculture insurance and agriculture financing. So these 2 sessions, we can have the questions for the panelists, please.
Okay, let them settle down, I think. Okay, I have this is a question for the first panel, and it's anybody can answer this, including the moderator. So my question is that social protection and social safety nets are a very big factor in all developing countries, including India, and there have been some experiments done to sort of link de-risking to social protection and to social safety nets. But of course, there are challenges. So in this case, what role do you think development agencies or development assistance can play in linking the social safety nets and social safety programs with de-risking without really killing the market and also not driving away the private sector, but rather including them more in the process?
Pranav, may I request you to respond to this, or anyone else? Arupji.
Jan, with your permission. You have my permission. So, thanks for bringing this up, Rupsha. This is a constant debate that is insurance and is government-provided insurance. Is it insurance or is it social protection? This is a debate, all right. The current discussion is moving towards inclusion of private sector, inclusion of insurance-based mechanisms under a broad agenda of what is called adaptive social protection. There is, and Jan will endorse, the Global Shield program is driving this agenda of adaptive social protection, and also IDF in that sense. But yes, there is a growing recognition of the fact that when we do the bottom-up approach, you need to be ensuring that all stakeholders, all players in their relevant capacities are provided a platform to contribute effectively. So there are examples that have currently been tried. Yesterday we heard about the R4 program that Charles Stutley brought up. That is, the social safety net programs have got linked with insurance and now scaled to many countries, multiple countries, not just in Africa. Similarly, you could pick up mechanisms in what is happening in the Pacific, what is happening in the Caribbean, where the Central Disaster Management Authority drives the process, and this movement towards macro to micro is being initiated. Still in the experiment stages. I would not call them pilots because, as Arup very elegantly says, pilots don't fly, and the need is for these people to fly. So that's the whole idea, and we hope to be building it up in the times to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question.
Mr. Stutley.
Hello, everybody. I would love to ask a question to our development partners, and I don't know who wants to answer, but we've got Syngenta, we've got ILO, we've got UNDP, and ADB. And I wanted to know, what is your view as development partners with using development funds to finance premiums? People talk about the word subsidies. And here I'm not just talking in a project phase where we have a lovely project where we put some funding in. I'm talking about the medium long term. And so I'll qualify this. I've got very gray hair these days, and I've been in this business for 30 years. I don't actually know of a single program globally in a developing country which has scaled up without some form of government support to premium subsidies. So I'd love to know your views, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles, for this question. I think this is something which maybe CEO PMFBY also made a point that if we want to scale any program up and have a financial inclusion and insurance inclusion of people en masse, then there has to be a very strong support from the government in terms of subsidizing the premium. I would like Jan to respond to this. Jan?
Maybe I'll start and I'll see if any of the other panelists want to come in. So I think firstly, in order to answer the question, that premium subsidy for insurance cannot be considered in a vacuum because of all the other inputs which could well be subsidized in the value chain of agriculture in general, in all kinds of different ways. From the inputs all the way to the food producers and everything in between. So you can't necessarily make a calculation as to whether something is valuable if you can't understand all of these other pieces and other things which may be subsidized through the chain. I think as a matter of principle, I think development assistance should be part of the puzzle of premium financing. But as I made a comment up there, development assistance is drastically small. I mean, look, $220 billion a year. I mean, that is not a lot of money, as I mentioned. The Premiership football players of the UK, those 400 young men and boys, together collectively earn $1.839 billion a year. So, you know, let's not say that ODA is the solution to the world's problems. It's not a solution even to the issues of social protection. It's a pitiful amount of money. And we think about the loss and damage fund, $700 million. I mean, this is not going to solve the problems of even one country, except a few island states, perhaps. So, you know, that's part of the thing, which is the advocacy side of it. So development assistance certainly has a role, but it's drastically far too little to be able to meet the needs of financial protection of farmers. So that's the gap. So we need to find other solutions. And I'm not really sure what they are, but it definitely is a part. What I would say is, though, I do think as a matter of principle, that we only value things if we pay for them in some way. And now maybe a small percentage. If I'm not, my understanding within the Indian the 40 million program, I think 80% is subsidized and 20% is paid for by farmers, if I'm not mistaken. I think that 20% is really key because they have a stake in the piece, without which, I mean, well, you know, we don't value things we don't pay for. That's just a human nature thing. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question at all, but I am giving you a complex non-answer, which I think is appropriate. Okay. But maybe I can ask my colleagues. I think, yes, you have Olga first and then maybe to Pranav.
Jan, I would like to add what Charles said. He said that when developing institutions like maybe ADB, including I would say World Bank also, if they talk about, you know, inclusion. So if there are certain countries which cannot bear the subsidy burden initially to kick off the program because of a number of reasons, can these institutions help in at least kicking off the, I would say, this crop insurance? So can developing institutions connected with development, can they help out? As there was some talk about a kind of fund which is being built up or is available. So I think that's a question, Charles. Somewhat similar.
That's very similar.
Because that's where some countries are struggling, that they're not in a position to start.
I think that's, we all need to go back to the panel, but yes, I would agree with you. And that is a role for development assistance to help get things moving, to de-risk, as we started, some of the early conversations. The issue might be, well, what do you do over time? How is it sustainable? I guess also, if we're thinking about the balance sheet of the development banks, who should be, I guess, part of this, we might want to hear from Arab, is, well, we don't want to add more debt to already indebted countries, even concessional, in my opinion, especially for this particular subject. So how do we make all these parts actually fit? It's not too easy. Something to be discussed, but can we hear, I think we saw from Olga and then Pranav, maybe also we'd hear from Arab as well.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Jan. I would 100% concur with what has been said. Without subsidies, this is not really taking off. I think the way forward is to ask ourselves, how do we dress it up? Because there are many countries really, when we talk about subsidies, they really run away. And we really need to be super cautious. we could, we could look into smart subsidization, where we break down into, let's say, a portion of the premium to be paid, fully in agreement with you. You know, the farmer, he or she has to be aware of the cost of the package of solutions. That's number one. Number two, there is a need of a launching support. This is where these subsidies should come in. But more broadly, it's about investing on monitoring basis risks, for instance, in investment on data, on really knowledge transfer, what we were talking before, inviting governments to share, create that platform of knowledge. So this is where I would call it a, let's say, smart subsidization going forward, but totally in agreement with what has been said. Thank you.
So I'll just build on Olga's point of smart subsidies, and Charles will understand this better. First thing we need to do is differentiate between subsidies and premium financing. Subsidies can take various forms, smart, unsmart, whatever way, whether we give. The issue is how to make it simpler for the farmer, for the end consumer, to have access to whatever the risk mitigation mechanism is being worked out for them. Let's take insurance in this matter. And what role can the players play? Charles' question was very pointed towards the government playing a role, but there are others who play a role, and there are input providers who have experimented with and doing it. The FISP program in Zambia has started some time back, supported by the World Bank. We've all played a small bit part in it, and continues now in a sustainable manner with inputs being subsidized and insurance being layered on to it. There have been experiments in India with Pioneer Seeds, Mexico, others who have brought in the seeds being, the seed prices themselves being built in with the insurance margins, etc. Output providers. In my younger days, we worked with Pepsi to provide these kind of work to do it, and that went on to become a case study, which I was very happy about. But so the point I'm trying to make is there are various ways in ensuring that insurance reaches where it is supposed to reach. All stakeholders have a role to play with it. Development partners are the facilitators, or to use Olga's words, the glue who can try and bring it all together and make people see reason for doing it. The role for development partners is not to provide premium financing in that sense. That's my personal view. I'll just stop there.
Maybe Arab, could we just, is that okay? Could we just hear from Arab on this? As
I might sound a bit controversial, but it's good to be controversial than towing the line. Well, the farming community, they are not fools, you know. So farmers are not fools. We should understand that. They're the most intelligent persons. As I said on the panel, they are at the front line of the risk. So when we talk of premium subsidy, are we talking of subsidizing the transaction cost, or are we talking of subsidizing the risk premium? Insurance companies want their transaction costs to be subsidized, whereas equity demands only the risk premium should be subsidized. And that is where when governments bid for premium, they are trying to bring down the transaction cost and not the risk premium in that sense. The risks will remain the same. Insurance, because of providing the diversification benefit, will bring down the portfolio risk. So, so in that sense, it's my personal view, premium subsidy can be justified that way. So that is very important. But then we talk about a lot of other things, data, we talk of taxes. On the one hand, you subsidize. On the other hand, the government charges taxes also when the policy is sold. So why not do away with the taxes and minimize that effect on subsidy? So that we have to look at it more closely. Agriculture, finance, agriculture, credit, insurance, both have to be seen together along with the taxation regime. And it should not be seen in silo. An integrated view has to be taken. Let me pause here. Thank you.
Any more questions for the first
Thank you,
panel?
Mr. Chatterjee. Professor Brown, you have a
Yeah,
question.
I'm sorry. I wanted to bring the conversation back to the climate data. I was really interested to hear the ambition of the Indian Space Agency, ISRO, to provide new satellite data, to provide new processing capabilities, the very ambitious, remote field identification that we saw earlier today. So the question is, given the South-South community of practice, how can India provide data sets for all its neighbors? It could go into the global satellite, industry. The US and the European Union do not need to be the only sources of information. So I really would love some discussion of how to subsidize that, how to move the weather and climate expertise into the South-South capabilities.
Dr. Murthy, is he available?
I think we are chasing him, but
so we'll just take another question. Dr. Murthy, we are trying to locate him. Yes, madam.
Hello, good afternoon all. It has been an eye-opening session, and especially the technology that is being proposed to be utilized in PMFBY. Because I represent an insurance company, and I find that because the insurance premium has to be low, in order to utilize the technology in assessment of claims. I would ask, because there are so many options of utilizing the technology, so many panelists have said that. One of the panelists said that it will be difficult to allow some subsidy on the cost he has put in his building his platform. So is there any plan the department is having so that all these platforms and all these technology supporters and startups can come up together so that then all the insurance companies can commonly utilize that resource and the data in assessment of claims so that the premiums remain low? It will not be possible for the individual insurance companies to access all these platforms.
No, but the platform that we are having, National Crop Insurance Portal, it's a single platform hosting all the data. So all the companies have access to it, all the state governments have access to it, the Common Service Center has access to it, all, I would say, the major players to the insurance schemes, they have access to the entire data. The claim is calculated, the companies can see, the companies are using it.
The additional, it is a innovation going on. So whether all these new innovations are going to be built in that. For example, that field-wise, that was a very good thing.
What did you say?
The field-wise.
Ma'am, I'll respond to your question. So these are the ideas which are being generated when we sit across and deliberate on some of the problem areas countries have, including us. So I think one of the idea is how to, I know your question from where you're coming from is basically the cost-intensive mechanism of loss assessments and loss adjustments, especially for localized calamities and mid-season calamities, wherein definitely there is a role of technology to play, and these are the, so we had, you mentioned about the previous presentation Fasal Lab made. So I think these are the ideas and food for thought for us to work and explore on this, wherein government can maybe collaborate with such technology initiatives and entities to build these services into the ecosystem of PMFBY itself. I'm sure maybe before we convene again in maybe next 6 months, we surely will have something to assist all the insurance companies on this space.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any more questions?
See, basically, I think we are all talking about insurance for all by 2047. I think that's the IRDAI's vision. The issue that we see normally is that, I think this is a question to the panel, last panel which was there. Normally when we are actually onboarding agents, I think agents are actually being onboarded as BCs. They're doing for the banking part. We have got 130 crore population. It's impossible for the insurance companies currently there to reach out to all those people out there because it's a humongous task. Why can't we ensure that whenever we are doing any kind of onboarding of these banking agents, they're also taken up as insurance agents, because then it helps in the overall penetration and the reach of people going up to the last mile. With the current kind of infrastructure we have as an insurance industry, it's going to take a long time for us to do. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, that whenever people are onboarding banking agents, why can't they be onboarded as insurance agents also?
Maybe inclusive and collaborated effort to make the insurance agent the same person who is the banking correspondent. Maybe Amit, would you like to respond on to this?
Some synchronization of regulations between IRDA and RBI, that's one. What happens is when a person comes on board as a banking agent, by virtue of being representative of the bank, if bank has a banker partner, that insurance products comes through that pipe by default. Now, if the agent wants to service some other insurance company's products, there is a conflict involved. So, but through platforms, government-led platforms, this is very likely, can happen in a marketplace kind of a system, and I think regulators are thinking about this, very much doable.
So just to add on this, I think for PMFBY enrollment, banking correspondents are already within the ecosystem of enrolling farmers on behalf of the bank. So that is already there and it is included in the operational guidelines also. But yes, the valid question is now, since we are talking about sandboxing and Sarthi and comprehensive risk protection for the rural farming household. So I think there's a greater role for banking correspondents also to play as insurance agents to make a last mile reach to the farmers. Dr. Murthy, we were looking for you. So Professor Brown has a question here. A very relevant and very interesting question, which we have been discussing for last 2-3 days, is the South-South cooperation and hand-holding and knowledge partnering with the countries being done by India. So her question was whether the satellite datas and the huge knowledge and capabilities being generated on Krishi DSS analytics, AIs, and weather data and all, can this be maybe provided to the countries who wish to develop their own capabilities? Can this knowledge transfer and handholding can happen in this space also?
Yeah, first of all, there are two data sources here. One is the remote sensing data from ISRO satellites. Recent Indian government's space policy, the satellite data of 5 meters resolution and higher granularity is now open, is now free. But the issue is that whether our Hyderabad Earth station, which collected all this data, whether these countries come within the footprint of the Hyderabad station or not, this needs to be checked. I think it covers up to Thailand, I think. Myanmar, Thailand, and on this side, some of the areas, I'm not exactly sure. So this is one issue, and then all the list 4 data, list 3 data of 23 meters and AVIS data of 56 meters granularity. This is open, this is free, and you can download the data. That is available in the web portal of NRSC, National Remote Sensing Center. So you need to check the coverage over your country. That is point number 1. The second point is that there are many thematic layers. There are many thematic layers like soil data, soil maps, and weather maps, weather-related information products, and other certain ground truth libraries, ground truth and spectral signatures. These Ministry of Agriculture, we started a Krishi Decision Support System, a national geospatial platform. It is a DPI. Yesterday, our secretary was also telling DPI concept of Krishi DSS. So through this Krishi DSS, we are going to open up the data But these thematic layers, they cover only Indian region. So if you want to do any innovations over Indian region, these data sets is going to be made available to you. I think the beta version of Krishi DSS, we are targeting in the month of July or August. And some of the services from Krishi DSS are going to open to everybody, and I think in the month of July, August. Most probably you can target some of the weather-related information products, soil-related information products, ground truth libraries, spectral libraries, and so on.
Can I ask a quick follow-up? I think my question was that you have all those models and algorithms that you could share for transformation of other data sets in other regions, right? Because if you put the code online, then Zambia can download your code and use your algorithms, which have been tuned for smallholder systems in their country, right? In an open data concept.
So in our decision support system, the platform, what we are targeting, there are well-defined users, user groups, user 1 and user 2. And for our MOU partners, so we are going to open up these standard set of algorithms. The crop mapping algorithms, for example, AI/ML algorithms, or the reference solutions, for example, the crop health factor, a parametric insurance which is being implemented in India. So the framework for this is also going to be made open. See, our intention is very clear. So we want to create a system of ecosystem of innovations. That is possible only if we share the data, if we share certain algorithms. But this is also possible only when we have meaningful collaborations. We can't make it just a public property and kind of things. So certain algorithms, yes, if you have an MOU with us, there is a concrete MOU, timelines, deliverables, and end use. It is a win-win for you and for me. So with such very, very general conditions, we are going to open up our knowledge and repository.
Thank you, Dr. Muti. Any other question? Maybe we can take one more question related to technology or the donor session, which the development partners session, which we had earlier during the day. Yeah, here you go.
I have my own microphone. Maybe if I could, it's not really a question, but maybe just a commitment, and in fact related to the last question from Molly. Sorry, sir, I don't know your name, but I need to come and talk to you. I think the technical ability of India is quite remarkable in terms of space. That last session on data and all of the different expertise was quite incredible. And from a development perspective, certainly myself, I'm sure others in the development community, we're not using that kind of thing in general, in our work. Some of our countries probably are. So the technical side of it I get. So I would say there's a commitment here we can make from UNDP, and I think by extension, I extend that to others in the multilateral sector. How can we work with you to transfer your ability, your technical expertise, into what makes sense for countries? I guess the piece missing, I would say, maybe Molly in that conversation, but it's a bit unfair to you, but it's not, just in the sense is that transferring the data and the things is one thing, but providing the technical ability to the countries and the communities and down to the farmers to be able to use it to take the decisions they need. That's the role that the UN can play. So looking forward to, together with AJ and team, to really find a way to make that a reality. So thanks.
Thank you, Ian.
So I think we can wind up this session, Ajay.
Maybe one question if anyone has. Any question, anywhere? Yeah. After 30 minutes. So fine, thank you. So Charles again. Mr. Charles, very valid question, and I think every one of us might be having the anxiety about the learning and carrying those learnings back home. So these all presentations, photographs, obviously of yours, especially while dancing and in the Goan outfit. So all will be shared in the WhatsApp group. So please don't leave WhatsApp group until next 7 days. Within these 7 days, we'll share everything on the groups for you to download while you are there in back home. Thank you. We had a very lovely and interactive Q&A on the session today, which we missed yesterday because of the very tight schedule. Over to you, Pooja, now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajay sir. Thank you so much, Kamna ma'am. Well, those deliberations definitely leave us with a lot of food for thought. And when there are so many beautiful energies and such an amazing exchange of knowledge all under one roof, time just flies. And that's exactly what's happened over the last day and a half. We cannot believe we have come to the end of what we can proudly call a very, very successful conference. But before I wind it up, it's now time to hear some concluding remarks from our Joint Secretary, Crop Insurance and CEO, PMFBY, DA and FW, Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Shri Ritesh Chauhanji.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. With the onerous responsibility of standing between you and lunch, which my team has given to me for concluding this almost 4-day affair, where we did COP and international conference and NRC. So I think 3 deliverables that we could really work on and deliver within the time span that was allotted. It has been a great experience for me personally to be exposed to what I can just very clearly and honestly say was a panoply of experts, panoply of views, especially people from different parts of the world. So it is a great humbling and learning experience for me personally. Let me begin by thanking all of you for that. We also undertook some profound discussions and exchange of ideas, and I could see the energy in the hall and the venue was really, really electric. And a lot of the key deliberations actually happened outside of this hall also, where I saw young officers from the states, you know, getting exposed to ideas from international community. I saw development partners, you know, talking to our great scientists here. I saw international participants, you know, dabbling with all the stakeholders here. So it was designed in a way, initially we thought that we will only do an international conference. And then the thought emerged that no, just having an international conference may not really serve the purpose. The purpose is to expose our stakeholders, domestic stakeholders, also to this conference. And therefore, if you see, it is in the logo itself that we have 2 conferences happening together. So one, the domestic national review conference, and another is the international component. And dare I say, with the energy that I saw within the hall and on the dance floor, that I think we were quite successful. There were 20 countries that participated besides India in this endeavor. And I am told that out of about 165 participants, 60 of them were from abroad. So that in itself represents a success in my mind. I congratulate the UNDP team as well as my team for coordinating such an endeavor. I'm sure that we, after having gone through all the sessions, especially the technical ones, especially sessions which offered insights into use of technology in this critical space of crop insurance and agriculture credit, we all will return better off to work in our own fields. Now, today's session, especially of embracing technological innovations such as remote sensing, blockchain, parametric insurance, as well as prioritization of gender angle into delivery, capacity building, knowledge sharing, were to my mind timely, and I think we should take this forward. From the country's perspective, as I reiterated and as I had posited in my opening remarks, India, with all that we have, whatever achievement we've been able to achieve, whatever milestone we have reached, we are committed in partnership with the development partners, especially UNDP, to build a package of practices or package of intervention which could then be taken across the world, following the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. So I call upon UNDP and other development partners, all of whom had an animated discussion, I think, after this session, to come up with what is the requirement that we can, take to the world. As far as my message to the states is concerned, I would call upon them to take the learnings from here, exchange the ideas, and double down probably on the technology initiatives. WINS, YesTech, as well as CropEc, I think represent the cutting edge of crop insurance. If we are able to handle them properly, and that handling happens at the state level, it doesn't happen at my level. All I can do is probably build good manuals. You are the people with the sickle in hand and doing the CCs. So if that is taken care, probably these problems are dealt with, not only domestically, but internationally as well. So having said that, I would again and specially mention Bajaj GIC for having taken up this onerous responsibility of hosting all of us. They did a brilliant job of making us, I think the stay was really nice, and all the logistics, and with the intervention of Prashant, who's standing right, I would please urge all of you to appreciate their efforts. He and his team were, running around all across, and I saw the WhatsApp messages. There is a group, and there would be messages at 1 a.m. in the night or 2 a.m. in the night, and they would be replied to by I don't know whom. But that's how these things get done, and they have done an excellent job. And one of the good things that they probably achieved was also to showcase our culture to the international participants. So thank you for that. And also CPMU in UNDP, who led by the able guidance of Kamna, who was sort of a monitor or a class teacher for all of them. So much so Amit probably took all his directions on time and everything from her. But yeah, it's great to have people like her leading the charge, leading CPMU. Ajay and his team deserve a great round of applause for doing all this brilliantly. So one of the advantages of hiring good people is that you don't have to do much. So I came in, enjoyed the weather, and most of this was just taken care of. So again, my heartfelt thank you to all of you for coming here. We are there to support in any capacity that we can. We are here to learn as much as you can teach us. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.